Ready? I'll hit the record button.
Good evening, everyone. We are here for a regular commission meeting. This is Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. Madam Clerk, can you get us started with our roll call, please?
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Groth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Amsler.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Oliveira.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, additions, deletions, and withdrawals to the agenda.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Manager.
Mayor, I am requesting that we pull 10C, 10D, and 10E. It has to do with the property rights, the comp plan, and the water supply plan. There was a miscommunication between staff and Alex David with regards to the process. So after the first reading of the property rights element, that should have been transmitted to the state for them to provide review and then come back for second reading. He thought staff was doing that. Staff thought he was doing that, so it was not transmitted. And so because of that, we can't do the first reading without the property rights already being adopted. So for the comp and the water plan, per the state's how this has to move forward. So by pulling the property rights element, that kind of delays everything else. So I'd like to pull those 3 ordinances and hopefully come back in May with them.
Okay, so before we do that, just so I'm clear, that the next step, so this doesn't happen again, the next steps for those 3 items would be the
Property rights elements goes to the state for comments. We get that back. It comes back as second reading for the village. Then first reading would happen for the comp plan and for the water supply. That then goes to the state for comments. When we get the comments back, then that comes back to the village for second reading.
So these all 3 will then need to go to the state for comments, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then we will have notice of it being put back onto our agenda.
Alex is on the Zoom in case anybody had questions about it, but not then.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. I apologize, everybody.
Okay, so with our new amended agenda with the withdrawal of 10C, D, and E, do we have, are there any other additions, deletions, or withdrawals at this time?
Yeah, first, let me say, Jonathan, I promised myself this would be the meeting when I didn't make any changes to your agenda, and it was my intent. And then today I'm like, damn it, I have to do this. So a couple of things. I would like to have a quick discussion, and now we're going to have extra time, I think, a quick discussion at the end of the meeting about our visioning workshop that we're having. I want to discuss a possible add-on to that while we're all meeting that day. I'd like to withdraw from consent resolution 2023-20. I think there's a wording issue problem in that. And then I either want to add something to the agenda for discussion, or if you guys want to decide to push it till May, I'm totally cool with that as well. we had a conversation about codes regarding cats. And Valerie said she would get back to us with some additional information, which she did just today. So we all got it, but it was just today. And in the interest of us having a minute to, I mean, I'm ready to have the conversation if you want to, but in the interest of having people be prepared and for residents to also be aware that it would be on the agenda, we could put it on to, at the end of tonight's meeting, I'll request that it be added to May, unless you guys want to talk about it tonight.
Well, notwithstanding those issues, don't we have a notice period? If we want to add something, if we want to add something like that? No, okay.
So I'm totally cool putting it on May unless you guys all got it today, if you want to talk about it today.
We don't know what's gonna be on May, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we have plenty of time, seems today, let's knock it out.
But residents don't know we're talking about it. That's the problem. And I know there were residents on both sides of that issue that were really wanted to be engaged, and I hate for us to sort of slide something through. So we got it today, and that's why I bring it up. So
No,
I know, Art, I don't want to keep pushing stuff off to May either, but I'm just concerned about
May
residents.
turn into June, I'm saying,
Or the second or third in May. Yeah, I know. I hear you.
whatever. I'm fine with.
Okay. Okay, so then I'll add, at the end of the meeting, I'll request that to be added to May, but that's one addition and one withdrawal, please. Or not withdrawal, but pull it off consent.
which one did you want to take off consent? Which item was it again?
23-20.
9D as in David.
I'm sorry, I should use the item. And then a quick conversation about our meeting on April 29th, and that'll be real quick.
Okay, so before we confirm the agenda as amended, do we have any other additions, withdrawals, deletions at this time? Okay, seeing none. So again, we have the withdrawal of 10C, D, and E. We are moving consent item 9D off of consent, and we are adding a brief discussion as to the April 29. Is that it? April 29 meeting? Okay. All right. So we have the agenda as amended. Do we have a motion to accept it?
Motion to approve the amended agenda, please.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Agenda will move forward as amended. So let's move on to item number 5, our presentations, which begins with our proclamation for Autism Awareness Month. I'll go ahead and read that onto the record now. Whereas autism spectrum disorder is the result of a neurological disorder that can affect anyone regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, or socioeconomic background. And whereas autism spectrum disorder affects 1 in 68 children in the United States. And whereas males are almost 5 times more likely to be affected by autism spectrum disorder than females. And whereas autism spectrum disorder is estimated to be the fastest growing developmental disability in the United States by the Centers for Disease Control and Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring. And whereas symptoms and characteristics of autism spectrum disorder present themselves in a variety of combinations and can result in significant lifelong impacts of an individual's ability to learn, develop healthy interactive behaviors, and understand verbal and nonverbal communication. And whereas early diagnosis and intervention, as well as ongoing support from family, doctors, therapists, and educators can positively impact persons with autism spectrum disorder to achieve better outcomes. And whereas persons with autism spectrum disorder should have access to appropriate services throughout their lifetime so that they may achieve their greatest potential and lead happy and productive lives within their communities. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan E. Groth, Mayor of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, joined by the entire commission, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Autism Awareness Month in Biscayne Park and urge all citizens to join me in this special observance. Okay, moving on to 5B, our Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Annual Report Presentation.
If we just ask Chief if you can grab the mic and hold it up close, that way we can hear you clearly.
Testing 1, 2, testing. All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, members of this great commission. I really do appreciate the invitation. I'm humbled here on behalf of Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. Obviously being public servants to the community of, to the village. In regards to the service delivery, I just want to, mention regarding Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, your fire department. We are 71 fire stations, 159 operational units that are ready to respond to, to the village. We have 2,800 employees, And, coupled with almost 300,000 calls that we respond to, it's just continuous training and the knowledge that we have out there. But just as equally as important as the information I just presented to you, we're an accredited agency. Out of over 30,000, 40,000 fire departments across this country, there's only 301 accredited agencies across the entire United States. So what does that mean to the residents? It means you're getting the latest and greatest in policy and procedures, training, equipment, apparatuses. So it's always the cutting edge in regards to what the services that are being presented to you and provided to you. So in regards to the number of calls that have that we responded to in the village, we've seen an increase in the last 4 years by just over 40%. Medical calls, structure fires, non-emergency calls, etc. So now, roughly just under those 300 calls, we've had nothing in regards to significant where, made a such as a structure fire that burned a house down or of that sort. But of those, under 300 calls, it took us approximately combined 7 minutes to respond. There's roughly 6 fire stations, but 11 different apparatuses, fire trucks, rescue trucks within 2 miles of the village that are ready to render aid to the residents. But in the event that there is a large, incident, it could be a structure fire, it could be a train derailment. There's all 159 units that are ready to respond, at the request of the 911 call. A little bit about myself. I was appointed to fire chief in August of 2022. I have 27 years in the fire service, 23 with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. I moved up the ranks, as an explorer. I actually started even before that. I was an explorer with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue at the age of 13, before becoming a professional firefighter at 19. Moved up the ranks, and I've been given the honor of leading the 6th largest fire department in the country. But with running one of the greatest fire departments in the country, it comes with a great staff. So I just want to recognize a couple of members from my staff: Assistant Director Maria Reyes, Chief of Staff Erica Benitez, and one of my district chiefs that oversees this area, Mark Chavers. So I definitely am not doing this by myself. I definitely have a great team that ensures that all the calls are being run, all the questions are being answered, and that we continue to provide the greatest service that possible. Thank you. Before I open it up for any questions, I have a commemorative plaque that I want to present to the village. Now, interestingly, I was talking to the city manager because I got a little concerned, or the village manager because I got a little concerned. I saw 1933, but in our records, we have 1931. And he educated me that 1931 is correct. It was the change of the name, and 31 is when the actual incorporation occurred. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to present you with the commemorative plaque to the village of Biscayne Park. Since 1931, we've been your fire department. So I actually, do you want to do a group photo? Sure, perfect. Yes, sir.
So actually, the timing of your visit is pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, because tonight on our agenda, we actually have, we're going to talk a little bit about emergency response.
Okay.
So my question, one of the big things that's happening obviously in this country, and I think everybody knows, is train derailments lately, right? All
Right.
over the country it's happening. And we're having, we have a train that goes right through the middle, right through to the corner of our village. So my question to you is what kind of interagency collaboration is there between the fire department and our police department as far as, I don't know if it's training or if it's just communication, planning, for any kind of emergency like that?
So
Between the two departments, not your department alone.
So it'll go to definitely the unified command concept where everyone comes in, all the stakeholders that need to make a decision regarding the incident come to play. And I have to use the Surfside incident as an example. Surfside Police Department, in regards to the number of police officers, I want to guess it's in that ballpark of being the same, give or take a couple. But when the Miami-Dade Fire Department arrived, there was a unified command that was established. The highest ranking individual from the police department, coupled with the fire department, began, establishing objectives. Now, our objectives may be different from law enforcement and vice versa. So with a trained situation, the establishment of the unified command, followed by what exactly are we dealing with? Are we dealing with a hazardous situation, or what tends to go up and down here is bright line? Though you make,
We have the big tankers come through here a lot.
okay, well, yeah, I see the FEC trains, correct. Now, I know that the situation that we saw up in Ohio and other places, there's different types of chemicals. Now, it's hard to say what tends to travel up and down, the pathways, but we establish a hazmat response team. So for the fire department, what we tend to have is if we receive a call for a train derailment, train crash, or of such, if we get information that it's a passenger train, we dispatch what we call a certain package assignment, meaning that certain types of resources are going to automatically respond. And you're looking at, just from the onset, you're looking at 15 apparatuses that are going to respond to a train derailment from Miami-Dade Fire. If it's a hazardous type train derailment, it increases by default to 18. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't get increased depending on when we arrive, what we find. So in regards to, let's use the hazmat situation. We determine we arrive, there's a hazmat situation. We quickly, what we have is called an ERG, Emergency Response Guide. It's an orange book. It's updated every 4 years, and it's the same book. It doesn't matter if you worked in California, New York, Florida. It is the same book that's given to all the fire departments across the country. Depending on the type of substance that's being carried, we quickly look at what's called the placard, the Department of Transportation placard. We determine what that chemical is or what they're carrying. From there, we determine what the plan of action is, what the area of isolation is, what we need to do for emergency first aid, and as such. So we coordinate with law enforcement. With a hazmat situation, depending if it's volatile, if it has a plume, if it's on fire, I can assure you if it is serious, by default, we're going to have to start with evacuations. In that emergency guide that's established with us, that's communicated with law enforcement, is, we work out the plan, and right off the bat, just as I had mentioned, though our objectives may be, slightly different, the end goal is to make sure that, the public is safe. So there's, the unified command process, along with the NIMS that we established, like we did with the Surfside collapse, is where most of all that information comes. But to say, universally, the plan of action for this is going to always be this, it doesn't happen. But there is a starting point.
Another question that I was going to ask tonight is there any way for us to know what kind of hazardous materials actually travel up and down? Is there any way to find that out? Is there a list? Is there
So
somebody that we can ask?
we don't have it. The state of Florida can provide that, or the courier that's actually, carrying the product. Now, in the event that we do have a train derailment, they do have a manifest. that we have to access. We know where to access it. So in the event that there is some sort of release, we know that we got to go to the actual, the front car, get that information. But what tends to help us is those Department of Transportation placards. You'll see them on gasoline tankers. You'll see them on, fixed objects that's hazardous. Usually there's a 4-digit number. We reference it in our guide, and it kind of gives us a quick way to remedy whatever the case might be, first aid, isolation. But eventually we have to get to those, to that manifest. In the event, and again, I don't want to bore with all the minor detail, but even when we can't access it, we do have access to the, the companies that, put the stuff or actually place the items into the rail cars. We get in touch with them, and they also provide us guidance. And then the last item is with a train derailment that's hazardous, especially serious. It's not just, even though we're capable of handling quite a bit, but because it's going to go into multi-day operations, you'll have local, state, and federal agencies on scene within 12 hours.
All right.
Okay.
Good. No, that answers a lot of questions. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, thank you. And
I'm sorry, may I ask
yes,
you a couple of
please,
questions if you
Mr.
don't
Chairman.
mind?
Yes, sir.
And since Art brought up the railway thing that we're going to be discussing, I'll start with those questions. I get complaints from residents, not complaints, concerns, I should say, residents regarding the 2 crossings here on the railroad tracks outside of Biscayne Park, 107 and 125th. And their concern is that they feel like the arms aren't down sometimes far enough in advance of the trains, that they cross the tracks while the arms are up and they can see a train that feels very close to them and coming at a high speed, especially the bright lines.
okay.
Are you confident in these crossings? Because I know there have been, like, they check them, they reopen them, they test them. What are your
So,
feelings
I
on
mean,
them?
it's my opinion that I'm comfortable and confident in them only because, they do conduct these different assessments. But if there is a complaint, there may be an issue and we would have to look, well, not the fire department, but we would, direct them into making the notifications to the FEC, to Brightline that oversees the crossing guard.
Okay. One of the conversations we're having here in the village is our road safety. We're doing a traffic study. We're looking at the density around us
Right.
and how that may impact the amount of traffic coming through the village. We've become a bit of a cut through for people to get from to other communities and to bypass some of the busier roads, Biscayne Boulevard, 6th Avenue. And one of the requests that we get very often is for speed bumps, speed humps, I guess 2 different names for the same thing. And then what I'll hear from residents, and again, this is why I'm asking you, I'd like to hear this on record from you. Can your vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, whatever vehicles you have under your authority, are speed bumps and roundabouts and some of these traffic calming measures, are they an issue for your vehicles if they need to get somewhere fast?
So every time a speed bump or a turnabout is installed, it does reduce the speed. So if the constant speed is 35 miles an hour in a residential, or not necessarily residential like side street, but a residential, relatively main street. When a speed hump or a turnabout is installed, it does, add to the response time. It's not necessarily a police vehicle where it's small and compact, especially the speed humps. If I have a ladder truck, and a ladder truck is that long ladder that sits on top of the truck, going over a speed hump greater than 5, maybe 10 miles an hour, anything greater than that can cause damage to the actual ladder or to the leaf springs. So the answer is yes, every time that a speed hump or a calming device is installed, it does add to the response time for the fire department.
So you can get over them, you can get around the
Yes.
I'm assuming roundabouts are engineered so they can accommodate your vehicles and.
Correct. As long as they meet the requirements set forth, we do get around them and they do install them. Again, I'm just in regards to the questions, yes, it does add to the response time, but we do get around them if necessary.
And this 40% increase that we experienced.
Yes, sir.
Is that typical of other communities?
I won't say it's typical, and I know that you and I had a conversation earlier that I've mentioned in the last 4 years that there was roughly a 40% increase. So this is strictly in the actual village. It's not outside the village. So this could be if there's a major street or an intersection that technically falls within the actual confines of the village.
Sixth Avenue.
And so if Sixth Avenue is actually in the village and an accident occurs and we respond to it, it's check marked as a incident that occurred in the village. It doesn't necessarily have to be a house, a business. It could be a streetway, it could be a waterway, it could be the railway. But if it falls within the geographical boundary of the village, then it's tagged as a village call.
Because without anything to compare it to, 40% sounds like a really big increase. So do other communities experience double-digit increases?
Not, well, I would have to look. Just overall, sir, the entire department over, the roughly 280,000 calls, 277,000 calls that we ran. Every year, there's usually a 2 to 3% increase, and it's
Oh, wow.
expected because of the fact that people are moving into the community. There's more structures being built, more residences. We see the traffic but we do see an increase overall every year, roughly 2 to 3%.
Countywide.
Countywide, yes, sir.
Okay, and then from a community perspective, what kind of outreach could your department do is appropriate in a community like Biscayne Park to educate people about things like fire prevention, CPR trainings? What kind of things do you make available to little communities with very tiny budgets that would like our residents more engaged in the
So,
events?
so the best part about, this great big community is you're not lost, just because it's a couple of thousand residents. It's not the case. We do have community outreach. We have our community affairs division that, conducts any type of free learning for fire safety from our adults to our children, to having conversations about water safety. We just started, we just started. Thank you. We just started our program for CPR awareness, where we have our conversations with the residents in regards to what they should do in CPR, medical emergencies, fire safety. Once again, Mr. Commissioner, we had the conversation, a really bad car accident happened in front of him, and everyone's quick to pull out the phones, but not to call 911. It's to start, recording the video. So we do have an outreach. I'll be glad to, give you some information. So we could guide you in the right direction, from our EMS to our fire safety to, just having, brochures, given to our residents.
That's great info to know. We have village boards that do all kinds of cool events. The chair of 2 of our boards are here, 3 of our boards are in the room tonight. So are you saying if we were doing a village event, it would be possible your outreach department could
100%.
attend and do some kind of things for people to learn more about specific topics?
And we do that right now. We do it on the weekdays and we do it on the weekends.
Wow. Is there a
So-
charge to the village for that? When
No,
you-
sir. No, they're in regards to
Gotta
this
ask
type
if
of
we can spend
event.
Money.
This type of event, we do, it's part of the services. It's part of
Okay.
the tax services, because community outreach in regards to our community to ensure the safety and well-being
Sure.
is necessary.
Especially pool safety with pool season coming up. Well, it's here, 12 months a year, but it's really coming up.
Yes,
Do you do CPR training for people?
not necessarily a class.
Okay.
We don't, it's more.
awareness.
Yes, and we do direct them because there's a certification process.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily do that. We have to give it to an outside vendor or.
You could guide people in the right direction.
Yes, sir.
That's really important, good stuff for us to remember, Mario, for community events. It'd be great to have them involved in something. Okay,
So-
thank you very much. I appreciate you answering
And-
the questions.
And I'll leave you with this, just one more thing regarding all of our outreach, everything that's going on. I know the S word, social media, it's out there. You could definitely see what we have available by accessing our social media for our community affairs. It's not just about fire trucks and rescue trucks, helicopters and boats. There's so many, different avenues within Miami-Dade Fire Rescue that we provide. It's, our ability just to show you and share with you. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
the invitation. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, with that, we will move to 5C, our police traffic operations recap.
You want to wait for the manager? Good evening, everyone. Commissioners, mayor, manager, clerk. Corporal Schwartz, Village of Biscayne Park, Major Navarro also. We're here to talk about our traffic detail we did this past month. Give you guys a little recap on it and a couple of things coming up in the future. Okay, as most of you know, we did a traffic safety enforcement operation this past month. Excuse me one second. Sorry. We did that on March 17th.
Corporal.
Is it Friday morning?
Yep.
Sorry. Not used to holding one. We did that on Friday morning, March 17th, from 6 a.m. to noon. We had several officers engaged in the operation. We covered village-wide with our main focus on traffic enforcement. We did speed enforcement, stop signs, traffic safety, seat belts, etc. Of course, as most of you probably saw, we had a lot of visibility on 6th Avenue and on Griffin. We ended up with 103 citations, 2 arrests. Sir?
Productive day.
It was a very productive day. 1 arrest was for no valid driver's license. The other arrest was a felony arrest for many suspensions and driving on a suspended license with 3 convictions.
It's important to understand that it's not just about the citations, it's about the education behind it. So everyone that we come in contact with gives us the opportunity to educate. So even though you don't have a measurement to that, it's definitely a plus. Okay. And it's something that we want to continue on a monthly basis as much as we can.
So as the major was referring to, when we do our traffic stops, whether it be for speeding, a stop sign, maybe it's for full tints on the window or no seatbelt, or texting while driving. As we're issuing the citation, we're speaking to the individuals, maybe they don't have their seatbelt on the child, or maybe there's someone under 18 in the front seat without a seatbelt. All our officers engage the person and we try and educate them as we're issuing the citation. So we're also looking at doing a multi-agency detail where we're going to have other agencies come. We used to do them as DUI checkpoints around the county. I was part of them for many years when I was on motors. It's more of an education enforcement than it is anything. We'll hand out safety belt pamphlets. We'll hand out a lot of educational material during those enforcement actions. Us as a village, the major said we're going to do these traffic enforcement operations once a month. We're going to vary the days, the times we do them. We have another one coming up this month. Again, depending on staffing, things are going on in the village, we'll determine those days and times when we do them. The last one, the reason that you saw most of our enforcement on 6th Avenue and Griffin is because when we were on the interior of the village, there was no traffic. So we moved to where the traffic is so that we can enforce and educate. That's all I have on the traffic enforcement. I'll leave it open for questions.
No, I'm curious. It sounds like it went very well, so we appreciate your efforts. So is this maybe something that your department uses to get a better understanding of maybe where traffic is shifting or where we're seeing more traffic? I mean, traffic is obviously a big issue in certain areas of the park. So does this kind of help drive or guide your department's understanding of where like I guess where the hot spots are for traffic? And if you see those shifting at all?
Actually, it's kind of backwards. We kind of study where the problem is at, and then we deploy the resources there. We're constantly evaluating where we're getting the complaints. Our officers are constantly out looking. We all know that Sixth Avenue is obviously a concern, so we're constantly listening to the community. We're out there looking, and then we deploy based on the needs. So we're constantly looking where it's actually needed. And the idea is to adjust different locations, different times and all that. So kind of touch every place at once.
And is that also driven by kind of the metrics that back up the citations that you're seeing, the department is seeing in
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
right?
Take all of that, the citation, we have to take that all into account. We take the citations, we take our patrols, when our gentlemen that are out on patrols see traffic picking up, whether on 9th Avenue in the morning as people are trying to get country, or whether it's our residents advising us there's something going on in a certain intersection or a certain time of day. We take all of that, we put it together, and then we look at where our needs or our resources need to go.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for explaining, going through your report. I have a couple of questions. About, you said 150,
103, ma'am.
103. Okay, within how much time, how long did the operation take?
That was a 4-hour period.
And how would you describe the typical operation that we have in the village with the, our usual officers versus this operation? How much bigger was it to be able to?
We had 8 officers out on the road, where normally we have a minimum of 2 patrolling the village at one time. So I had both motorcycles out. I had multiple officers with radar units. Other officers that didn't have them were working stop signs and other traffic related incidents.
Yeah.
So when you put that much here, like myself, when I was on Motors for the village and I would do traffic enforcement on 6th Avenue, it's only 2 of us. So I'm writing a ticket to one person. I can't see every other car going down. So you put that many more, you multiply
able
what
to do
the
that.
enforcement.
And then is there a data that you can share regarding, are this mostly residents that are being cited? Is it outsiders of the village? Is that something that you have as a percentage without having to go into obviously the details, but is what do you see?
It all depends where it's going to be at. Obviously, 6th Avenue, we're going to get a lot of transient traffic, whether it could be just Miami Shores, it could be North Miami going either way. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you percentages. I would truly have to research each citation because our ticketing system, our electronic ticketing system, doesn't do it by whether they're a resident of Biscayne Park or North Miami. Of course, it's going to be a larger number of transients, but there's still not so much the speeding portion, but I can tell you our stop sign citations, the majority are residents.
Good. Interesting. Thank you.
Jonathan, if I may, a couple of quick things.
Sure.
So I'm glad Veronica asked that question about residents, non-residents. I was going to ask it, and I would love to know more about that as we start looking at the traffic information that we'll be looking at after our traffic study. In addition to the citations, did you issue warnings that day?
There were no warnings issued that day.
And the interior versus 6th Avenue, is there benefit to, I walked that, you guys know, you see me walk around a lot. And I was out walking that morning and I saw this in action and it was quite impressive, I have to say. Is there benefit to having empty cars, maybe with their lights on, sitting places where you guys can't be on those days? And the reason I ask is, of course, while I was out walking that morning, admiring what you guys were doing on Sixth Avenue, then I came down 115th, and at Eighth Avenue, someone came barreling through a stop sign, flying through it. I'm like, well, of course it would happen. They're all 10 feet that way. So is there benefit to those kind of things?
There's pros and cons to that. There's a lot of departments that have the extra vehicles where they can put the decoy vehicles out.
Mhm.
For it to be effective for us, to be 100%, we'd have to move it around, number one, but you'd have to have more than one. It's like our speed signs. I have 3 speed signs, which we try and move around.
Right.
So those are to be deterrents similar to a decoy. Once the first maybe couple days the decoy is there, people may slow down for it.
Mhm.
But once they figure out it's a decoy and it's sitting there, there used to be a car on your way to Key West that used to sit there. The first time I drove by it, I kind of slowed down. But the second, third, fourth, fifth time I drove by it, I'm like, there's nobody sitting in it. So there's pros and cons to it.
Mhm.
We don't have the resources here in order to leave a decoy car just out there.
Understood.
Commissioner, instead, what I worked with the chief 2 years ago, which our officers still do, is they will be, whether it's in the median or off to the side or on Griffin, with their lights on while they fill out reports or while they do something. That way, a driver sees that the lights are on, presence within the vehicle, where a decoy, you don't have that. And you can't just leave the lights on because the batteries will all drain out, and then we spend more money on maintenance. So we kind of do a decoy, but there's actually an officer in there and the lights are on while they're filling out any kind of reports or anything like that.
Right.
Well,
We call that our traffic detail. So if there's officers that aren't doing enforcement at that moment,
Mhm.
they'll be sitting. You'll see them parked on Sixth Avenue. You'll see them on 9 and 113 and 115, with their lights on, sitting there while they're doing reports or doing something else.
Well, thank you for the report. It was very impressive to see. I got calls or texts from a couple of people who noticed, and they were really grateful that something was going, hey, what's going on out there? I see a lot of cops pulling people over. So residents noticed as well. I wish we could do it every day, but because, it's like the good news, bad news here is the good news. I got 103 citations. They gave out 103 citations. And a 4-hour period of time. And then the bad news is, oh my God, in every 4-hour period of time, look how many people are speeding through our village that aren't getting stopped or slowed down somehow. So it indicates like a big problem. And I'm
Well,
glad you guys are.
You have to take that with a grain of salt too, because it could have been that period of time.
I understand.
Okay.
We
It could have been
extrapolated
that
over
day.
time and
You
Yeah.
not every day do we have 100+ people driving above the speed limit through Sixth Avenue or running stop signs.
what day of the week was it? I forget.
Those are Friday.
Okay. Well, I mean, but I understand. Grain of salt, certainly.
I
but you
understand
can
what you're
also-
saying.
You can also imagine what's really going on out there, every day, but really grateful that you guys did it. Thank you.
And
I would just throw in a thank you as well. I saw you, my neighbors saw you that live on 9th Avenue and deal with the early morning speed racers and 113th as well. And I would say that of those folks who got ticketed, I would think that they're gonna slow down the next time they come through here. And that's what I think of when you say the education piece. So getting that reputation back up.
Well, that's
So
our,
thank you so
that's
much
our
for
hope
that.
eventually. Any other questions?
No, I was just gonna say, it was great actually to see it in action as well. I think it's a wonderful thing the chief was leading in order to, in a way, respond to the complaints we've received. As you know, the traffic is an issue for residents. We have many emails from different parts of the village of people complaining about certain areas. It could be, just cars driving, it could be commercial vehicles, whatever it might be. It is a big issue. I happened to have my meeting with the chief that morning in the village, so seeing it from the inside happening. And the conversation was about, this is in response to the certain level of concern there is in the village regarding this. So having the chance to see that put in action to reflect how, we listen to what the residents are saying. It's wonderful and very appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. If everything goes the way we're hoping, this will be more proactive than reactive. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Corporal. Thank you, Major.
Thank you very much. Okay, having concluded section 5, let's go ahead and move on to section 6, our public comment. Start with individuals here in the log cabin.
Hello, Dan Keys. Just wanted to thank you for the proclamation reference autism today, Mayor. That's a very important subject, especially since it's critical for parents of children to identify this problem at the earliest possible age so they can get the kids help. I wonder if the community might think about going further and possibly tasking the recreation manager or one of our boards to expand on educational opportunities in the community, or lists of resources or literature that might be posted here at Village Hall, at the rec center in particular, just as a thought. Segue to, I know we're not going to discuss these two ordinances in public hearing, but 2023-05. I sent you all emails, which were frankly, one of them was quite a mess. And if you understood it, I'll give you credit. There were 5 issues there that I thought were of concern, actually. In the 05 ordinance, bottom line is there's a document from the town of Jupiter that kind of more concisely puts the issue forward, and especially with respect to the backup information that the state legislature used to promulgate that state statute, and specifically in respect to judicially acknowledged and constitutionally protected private property rights, and those things I think are integral to the statute, and then should be clearly stated in our ordinance. Moving to 2006, that's the one that was a mess. 2023-06. Again, there's 3 or 4 things that 5 things that I have an issue with. There's some issues with the table of contents that need to be looked at. In chapter 5, objective 5, should be the place that we talk about how much park space we have. We should kind of solidify the amount of park space that we have today, and encourage that as a minimum, and so that if we want to increase our park space, we don't have to go back to the comp plan to do it. But we have 3.75 acres per 1,000 residents now. We ought to solidify that and actually kind of better identify those areas, possibly in some sort of a document, and possibly we should have a policy to try to increase the number of acres of park space in our community as we go forward as a policy. Okay. Bear with me. Yes. Policy objective, chapter 5, objective 4, policy 4.4 talks about a canoe ramp. I know that we sort of think there's a canoe ramp on one of those 2 pieces on either side of the bridge. I don't know which one exactly it is. But I think actually the language that was there was probably better in the existing document. But I'll clean that up and send it back to you with some comments. Chapter 6, objective 5, policy 5.2. I really have a problem with the statement that the village will prohibit and discourage vehicle parking on swales to minimize soil compaction. That should not be enshrined in our comp plan. In my opinion, that should be something that should be left to the political discourse at the commission level, and where people have an opportunity to and people should not have to overcome a comp plan change to have that issue dealt with, considered in our community. And it's very important to me. Moving right along. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. I will clean up these documents and try to get them back to you for your enjoyment just before you go to bed at night. See you later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While the next public speaker comes up to the mic, just a reminder for those on Zoom, if you wish to make a public comment, please hit the raise hand icon, which is in the bottom of the Zoom toolbar, so that we can unmute you once we receive the comments from Zoom. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, everybody. Ezra Deutsch, 885 Northeast 113th Street. I don't have any prepared remarks tonight, but with all the talk about, well, with the police officers here saying about the successful detail that was conducted, and the talk about traffic, I think even though my remarks are unprepared, I'll still speak on it because I've been thinking about it for quite a while. I run a lot. You may have seen me in Biscayne Park, usually 30 miles a week. So that adds up. So I'm pretty well versed in waving at traffic and seeing how fast they're going and how close they are, because I don't yield. I don't always give them the grass because they're sharing the roads with us. I want to speak about how, and we do have a long runway here, so it's not going to happen tomorrow. I really enjoy that we're getting a traffic study done. Commissioner Kennedy has spoken about that. I can't wait till that comes back. The manager's vision that we're conducting, I think that will all come together very nicely. I want to think about how we do traffic calming. I'm very much against speed bumps, not only because what the fire department said. I just think that what are roads for? And we drive on them all the time. Roads are fundamentally for greasing the wheels of commerce. We have 0 commercial entities in Biscayne Park. We're all residents. So really we live on glorified driveways. You know, I like our glorified driveways. I run on them a lot and I use them. But really what we need to be focused on is, with the traffic study that's conducted, we need to be focusing on technology. Everybody drives with their technology. We don't get in our cars without putting in an address, and that tells us where to go. We really, I think, pending those traffic studies, we need to be really focused on the interior streets, the ones that we can control. I know that we can't control Northeast 6th Avenue. Speed. Because if we lower the speed limits, if we start walking on the streets and traffic gets slower, our phones, technology will reroute everybody around us. The density that's coming from North Miami, I am in favor of, because it's not Biscayne Park. Let them do it. The density that's happening in Miami Shores, I'm for it, because it's not Biscayne Park. It's going to happen. We can't control it. But what we can control is our speed limits on the roads that we can, and we can let technology do the rest. The officers did detail on Northeast 6th Avenue, and it was very successful on educating outsiders, if you will, however he used the word for it, but also educating fellow Biscayne Parkers that our interior streets are ours, and anybody that's cutting through will have to deal with us walking, and they will be slowing down. So again, these remarks were unprepared. I will be speaking about this more often, but I do thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Janie Anderson, 11th Place and 119th Street. I came in a little bit late, so I want to confirm code is still on the agenda and hasn't. And thank you, Mac, for putting that as a discussion item. Code first came into being here, I want to say probably the mid-1990s. And since then, in my opinion, probably the biggest obstacle it's faced is the lack of unified commitment to the whole concept and understanding of the concept from both the various commissions who have sat since those days, and in some cases administration. And by commitment, I'm not saying blind allegiance. I mean, understanding the whole concept of code, its place in a dynamic, well-run, desirable community. Sure, you'd have one or two commissioners who were on board. Mostly you'd have lukewarm and you had a few who interfered. Well, when you have employees who don't get support and they don't get guidance from those they report to, it's not rocket science. They're not going to work to their optimal level. And that's the first thing we need, is to have that unified commitment to those folks if we're going to expect more out of them. It's something that I found a little disconcerting, and I hope I misread it, is on Mario's report. It says 99 courtesy notices were opened and there was no follow through. So they essentially had to be removed. I would hope that there is standard operating procedures going to be in place that then aren't dependent upon who is sitting in the code officer seat. That goes with the department, because the idea that there were 99 possible issues out there and nobody took responsibility for follow through, obviously that's something that's got to be addressed. And just one last question. Where are we with this driveway ordinance? I mean, I do see a lot of new driveways in, but there's clearly still a lot that appear not to be in compliance. And I thought that deadline in the ordinance was January. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners, neighbors. Hope everybody's doing well. I was very glad to see the police officers here doing a presentation, because we have been talking a lot about traffic. I think a lot of us who walk been talking about traffic. There's a Wednesday walking group that's been going out at 5 o'clock. Some of you have been on here. I know Commissioner Kennedy's been part of that, and others in the room. And when we walk and we have a whole bunch of people, it slows everybody down. So we were thinking about walking all day and all night, just along up and down all the streets, but I don't think we can keep up with that. So the alternative, I guess, would be it's Andrew. I just spoke to Andrew's point. We moved in here 8 years ago, having come from Miami Beach to Surfside, where parts of Surfside the speed limit's 15. I don't know what is required to do that, if the traffic study is part of that or not. I'm not sure what the status of the traffic study might be, but hopefully we can find that out. But I think to that point, if we lowered the speed limit and then enforce that, because right now it's 25, as people probably know, and yet most people here are not going 25 in the mornings and at night, and it's really around those critical hours of people going to work and school. We were out at the night of the Jazz Fest on our median on 116th and 9th, talking to one of our neighbors who happens to also be a law enforcement officer. He was off duty with his dog. We had our dogs, I should say. And we were talking about traffic, and some maniac came up the wrong way on 116th. And when he got to the end, he was told he was going the wrong way by the law enforcement officer and my wife. I was back with the dogs, and he came back. He said, he started screaming. I won't tell you all the things he said. They were not nice. And he said, I'll be back. And he came back and parked about a half a block away and came charging out of his car ready to fight. So we had the Jazz Fest going on a couple blocks away, and there were two officers there with their lights on, making sure everybody's cool there. And I'm not blaming them for that. They can't be everywhere, obviously. But I can tell you, Andrew said he does 30 miles. I would say I probably do about the same between walking. I walk at least an hour in the morning, another half an hour at night. I used to bike a lot, so different times of day. And I don't work anymore. So, and my window's open most of the day when I'm home writing. And I can tell you that 9th Avenue is a mess. It's a nightmare. People are running up and down that street like crazy, cutting all the way through. And when the officer said there's no traffic inside the park, they had to move to 6th and Griffin. I don't even comprehend that statement. Maybe because there were 10 police officers in one place, so everybody saw them and went around. But if one officer was there to stop people, or people were wandering around, so my request is, can we get copies of the number, and I think that Commissioner Amsler sort of was asking, how does this compare, that kind of, operation they did compared to normal days? How many tickets are we giving out? And can we see that? Can we get that information? And if so, can I please get a copy of it? Because I'd like to really compare that. So that's enough on that. And let me, before I run out of time, just say the workshop that was held was it last week on the land development code was great. I just would really once again like to point out, please, please, please look at landscaping more than you are. Look at, for example, the house on 11095 Northeast 8th Avenue. It's a corner house. It's got an elevator. It's kind of hard to miss, but you only see that if you look over the big, huge hedge because it's very well hidden. I don't know how many feet it is, but everything I heard last week about the land development code is going to come down to the height. And I asked Gage after he spoke, he was sitting behind me, how many of those new applications that everybody's so concerned about that are coming in from these LLCs are more than 30 feet, which is what you all were sort of going toward. None of them were. They were 25 to 30 feet. So all of this to settle on 30 feet, which people are doing anyway. Please, please look at the landscape part of it. And please also, I'm not saying don't restrict the height, but please look at the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Admitting into evidence.
Thank you.
So thank you for listening. I'll make this brief, as many of you know,
We
because
need,
I've said
your
so.
name and address, sorry. Just for the record,
Oh,
for
I'm
public comment.
sorry.
That's okay.
The address is 1040 Northeast 121st Street. I bought that house in November. 2 weeks later, my insurance was canceled because of the roof. Have not had insurance since then. I wasn't able to get a permit for a roof until January. So that just will lay the groundwork as to this frustration at this point. There was a metal roof put in. The roofers submitted the plan with an 18-inch overhang. They did not follow that plan. There is an 18-inch, there is part of the roof is flat and part of the roof is metal. The metal used to be tile. So everything was followed as the original roof line. So there's an overhang from the front, the side, the back, but then on the other side, it's not an overhang. There never was an overhang, so they just did it that way. That was obviously incorrect. My problem now is that, just to clarify, I am not an engineer. I did not go up on the roof. I did not take measurements. There were 3 inspections in progress done, all passed, including when the metal was being put on the roof. Then there was a final inspection on March 8th that also passed. On March 9th, I received a call that it was invalidated. The reason for that is that the lack of an overhang. So now the first 2 pictures are the house as it stands now. The last 2 pictures are one showing you that from the roof line to the top of the window is 17 inches. The sketch that is about to be approved is for a canopy to enhance. This is supposed to be for beautifying the property, and the deal has been made to create this canopy. So there is in fact an 18-inch overhang, but the canopy, as you see, starts 4 to 5 inches below the roof and then extends downward. I don't know at what point I'll still have sunlight, but I can tell you that not only will this be an eyesore, it seems to me, obviously it's not on, but if the purpose of the ordinance is to beautify Biscayne Park, it sort of seems contradictory to now enforce. The ordinance can't be changed, but we can force a canopy. So I'm not really sure why this is happening. And this is why I'm bringing it. I went to the planning meeting last night. I was told ordinances could not be changed. I was also told I should have known, and I agreed to have an 18-inch overhang. I really don't care what the overhang is. I didn't build the roof. So yes, it should have been an 18-inch overhang, absolutely, and it's not. But at this time, at this point, the roof is done. We are approaching hurricane season. There is no way a canopy will be as effective as the actual roof that is on the house. Last night, Pedro Martinez mentioned that he did not feel that if the canopy flies, it will hurt my property, which essentially, once it flies, it has hurt the property, but it could endanger the neighbors' homes. I don't know how that's okay with Biscayne Park. I don't know what to do. I really challenge anybody here to look at those pictures and tell me that that overhang would actually beautify that house. Because I think that house looks great as it is. So I don't know how, if there's anything that can be done, if I need to request a variance, I'm not sure. Time is ticking. I still don't have insurance because clearly once I told the insurance that we had passed inspection, they asked for a completion certificate, which was denied by Biscayne Park. So that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Marissa Gruen, Northeast 735 111th Street. I figured, I'd preface this with like when I used to work at the corporate environment, we used to have these segments and emails called Happy Minutes. And I thought, not that it is needed in this type of environment, but I think it's like a nice balance, and not that everyone's, the residents' concerns are invalid. I'm sure they are, but I just like to, share happy minutes with what's going around in the neighborhood. And one of the days I saw Public Works stop on 6th Avenue and pick up trash. They put on their hazard lights on, which is also a bonus, but I thought that was just like a really good quality of our staff to really care, but not just within what's going around in our neighborhood, but what's on the perimeter. And thank you. I think it's Public Works as well for fixing the 113th and 8th dog waste bin. I have a dog and it's kind of like an eyesore to look at the bin. So it's, the small things that matter. And I heard, well, I actually am a follower. The village caved to create an Instagram account. And yes. And I learned this past Sunday that I missed the Jazz Fest. So I just want to let you know that there are these different types of mediums that the residents do prefer and can stay informed with what's going on in the community. And then, of course, last but not least, we heard about the traffic study, and that was like, I'm sure, music to the residents' ears, like, yes, but also like, all right, follow the rules too. So that was really great to just recognize, things taking action, and then hopefully get some information how we can, help our community or village be a little bit better. So that's my happy minutes. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other public comment here in the log cabin? Okay, seeing none, do we have something on Zoom?
Yes, Mayor. First is Sean O'Neill.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. Sean O'Neill, 11709 Northeast 8th Avenue. One thing is, I guess at the end, somebody can tell me, because I can't really see your faces too clearly or up close, whether the CAT item is actually going to be discussed today or next meeting. I wasn't clear on whatever the ground rules were when you guys discussed it at the opening. But I will say that the gentleman who spoke about technology and traffic, I mean, I haven't done a lot of research on this, but or any research really, but I do like the idea of slowing down this the speed limits or lowering them within the the residential streets, not the if we can't do the thoroughfares. And part of the reason is because, as you all know, I own multiple classic cars, and it kind of, every time I see a speed bump, I cringe. But also, I mean, I do think it's there's speed bumps or whatever it is. I think there's speed bumps in different places. Sometimes they work depending what kind they are. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to lot to deal with, whether we're having the humps or the bumps or those kind of like plastic or rubberized ones. I don't know. Lowering the speed limit seems like a pretty low cost thing to do. No maintenance other than, changing the signs that are currently up in the village. So I would encourage that. One thing I did want to add to comments about the cat issue. I've talked to one of my neighbors, and there was some empathy which I could appreciate, and we've since had more friendly relations. Just because they expressed an understanding of my concerns, which was helpful. But one of the other concerns that was raised with I was walking my new dog out in the street, and I saw a lady with another dog, and she was kind of fending off some cats because her dog was barking like crazy when the cats were crossing the street. And she was like, "Oh, there's a lot of cats out here." And I was like, "Yeah, who you telling?" And then she said, she was like, "Yeah, I was walking by the house the other day, and then there was 5 raccoons feeding from the bowls." And open feeding is one issue, and it's not just cats; it's other animals that are coming to them, and raccoons in particular. I've got large piles of raccoon, waste in my yard at different times, and now that I have a dog, it's like I don't really feel comfortable with my dog run around out there. In addition to the other stuff that I complained about, so I don't know what can be done. You guys are trying, which I appreciate. Trying to understand what can be done, if anything, or at least putting things on the books. I know Commissioner Kennedy has talked about open feeding in general being banned. That would be one thing that would be a little bit easier for a code observer or code enforcement officer to actually observe, as opposed to 4 cats or 4 dogs or a combination thereof. So, I don't know what the answer is, but, if it's not one thing, it's another, as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking at buying a fence, a thing that goes over the fences that kind of stops cats from jumping, but I can really only put it on one part of my yard because that's where we have the wood fence. And that's gonna, that would cost me, over $800 to do that. And good Lord knows whether it's actually going to be effective. So, again, I sound like the squeaky wheel, I'm sure, but, the problems are real to me. And just to say, like, throw your hands up and not do anything, I appreciate, those of you who are looking into it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have someone by the name of Amy. I think I know who it is, but I will allow them to unmute themselves. Amy, if you can unmute yourself.
Well, I know we have.
Oh, sorry. So sorry. I haven't done that before. This is Amy Raymond, 11520 Northeast 9th Avenue. I've lived here 8 years, and we are so privileged to have a police force here. It's unbelievable. However, I would love to see them be used to their greatest potential. I don't know if they want that. I know I want that, because I use my hand. I walk morning and night, rush hour, morning, night. I try not to go at rush hour. So I don't go up 113th. I don't go up 119th, because everybody here knows where they're speeding. They're speeding up 9th, they're speeding up 10th, and they're speeding up those streets. So I use my hand. Now, my husband would say, Amy, you're going to get shot one day, but I don't want to get run over today. So I just gently use my hand. It's with good intentions. I have no anger behind it at all. It's just, if I feel like I'm going to get hit, I just take my hand and I just go like, slow down, with my hand. And most people really do it. One guy stopped, started screaming at me. I just said, wow, but I don't know what else to do anymore. So my idea is either to have, which I don't know if it's going to be allowed, to have a sign that I hold up that says the speed limit, which I think it's better what I do, because I don't think people are aware they're going 40 miles an hour or 45 miles an hour. I really don't sometimes. Or I think they're allowed to go, it's 25, so they're allowed to go 30 or something, but they're going 35. They don't realize it. And they usually do slow down, but many times they don't. And the only other idea I had was to do a protest in front of the village hall because so many people talk to me about it all the time. And I've just been quiet because I'm trying to let the village do their thing. But it gets very frustrating. And I'm so glad we're taking care of it now. And I wanted to say one more thing that, so one night, every night I walk pretty late, so it's getting darker and it's dusk. I would say dusk and then sometimes dark. And the rec center has kids on the playground. I've seen teenagers with in the tot lot. I've seen people playing basketball. I heard screaming children. So one night I said, let me ask the cops, because they were just sitting there on the other side, just talking, 2 cop cars. And I said, well, do you know what the rules are here? And both of them did not know what the hour was, what time they were supposed to stop them, that they were supposed to stop them. So that's been frustrating for me, and I try to ignore it now because there's nothing. This is the only time I've spoken because I don't really feel that comfortable, honestly speaking, in public. But I'm glad I had a chance to do that today. And what I'm asking for is to please come internally, because honestly, I don't see the police stopping anybody. And I walk a number of times a day, a lot of times to my kid's house on 120th. I've never seen a cop stopping anybody. And I want to see this stop before change. That's what we're doing now. We want to change it before where there's going to be like 100,000 or 200,000 new people in this vicinity, from the shores to North Miami. And it's scary. It's very scary. So thank you very much. And I wish you all well.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on Zoom?
Mayor, I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, I know Madam Clerk has one comment to read into the record. So Madam Clerk, if you'd please.
Thank you. Dear Mayor and Commissioners, I've been busy and hadn't looked at the April 4th Commission agenda. I agree with Dan Keys and his recommendations, and I also strongly disagree with this section. Policy 5.2. The village will continue to maintain and protect its network of tree canopy, swells, and medians to ensure maximum groundwater recharge throughout the community. The village will prohibit and discourage vehicle parking on swells to maximize soil compaction. Parking on the swells has been a long debated subject, and for the most part, it's come down to a few commissioners and a handful of people being against it and most residents being in favor of it. It's not something that should be decided by a handful of people and usually without kids or extended family. Commissioners are the ones who vote on the issues, but they are supposed to respect the residents. This should be a community discussion. When you live in a community that has as much green space as we have, it's a little ridiculous to claim compacting the small area that the swell represents is going to have a huge impact on groundwater recharge. Groundwater recharge, a hot topic in the village. Swell parking, if necessary, swell parking is a necessary function for many residents in Biscayne Park. Many properties do not have the space to provide off-street parking for more than a few cars. Do not prohibit swell parking or development of swell parking spaces. Barbecue. That's all for the record, Mayor.
Madam Clerk. Okay, so having completed our public comment, we'll go on to commission reply to comment. I understand that our manager has an update on some of the things that were requested, and I'd like to let him go ahead and speak since it might preempt some of our duplicative.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. With regard to the request, whether how many tickets or warnings or anything like that are given by police that was made earlier tonight, that information is given on a monthly basis as part of the manager's report. There's a PD attachment that's on there. At the request of the commission, we've moved from just the monthly report to comparative months so that we can see for the whole year how that looks. So that is already being given. I heard several residents concerned with the speed limit. The speed limit is 25 miles an hour. That is the lowest amount that the county will approve. They will not go below 25 miles an hour. We can thank our neighbors to the south of us, Miami Shores. They did quite a lot of things that the county then said, oh no, we're going to preempt anybody else from doing these things. So from closing streets to lowering it below the 25 miles and several other factors, we are not able to do that any longer. With regards to the overhang on the house, at the end of the day, the contractor knew what they were doing. They knew that they had to do the overhang. They decided not to do it. The rough inspections, the 2 rough inspections that were doing while the roof was being done were passed, and those were okay. The final inspection became the problem. And so when our building official, who was aware of the property, saw that the new roof inspector passed it, he invalidated because he knew that there wasn't an overhang on it. Because of the confusion, the village has been trying to work with the resident in order to not tell the resident, you have to spend another $30,000 to redo your roof. And so the solution that was brought up that the planning board is also working with is the overhang. Yes, it's an aesthetic feature, creating a facade in front that would help create that that overhang component, which would essentially meet the code. Unfortunately, the code does not allow for any exemptions with regards to the overhang on the metal roofs. So as it was reported during the planning meeting yesterday, from my understanding, I wasn't there, but I was told that the planning board essentially said you can try this solution where you would come to the permit for this facade. It's a much cheaper version, or have your contractor redo the roof. Ultimately, it's your contractor's fault. And so if you want to go back and say you got to redo that roof and they have to eat the $30,000, that becomes a civil matter. Because of the frustration that you've had, and because we know of the invalidating of that final, we have been trying to work with you to give you something where it's not redo the whole roof. And so that's the solution that we were able to come up to. But there is no way to exempt it. You can do a variance, and I will not speak for the commission. But again, the ordinance says no variance will be given, period. So even if you do the application and you go through the process to do it, the planning board's going to say no, and the commission's not going to hear it because the code doesn't allow it. Now, the board can always change the code by ordinance. They can change the charter by having it go and put on the ballot to change to have the residents change the charter. So things can always change. It depends where it is. This is an ordinance of the village code, so that can change, but as of right now, it's not an option. So I hate trying to sound so matter of fact on it, but we wanted to try to provide an option that you didn't have to have a big fight with the contractor and over $30,000. But ultimately, it's that's where we're at. It's either option A or option B. So, and I can completely understand and then say redo the whole roof. You know, it's trying to work with you, and so that you don't have to go through the 30,000. But ultimately, that's where we are there. With regards to and I thank Amy for bringing up with regards to people past the dawn and dusk over at the park. I will get with our police staff and verify that everybody does know that. And now that we got the software, we can make sure that everybody clicks that they are aware of that as well. So I do appreciate her bringing that up, and we'll double check. And again, thank you to Dan Keys. The idea for more information about autism and all, it's a subject matter that's dear to my heart. So I appreciate that, and we'll definitely work with not only our boards to include it in part of events, but we'll have information at the rec center and all for that as well. And just one last thing, and I'll probably be taking, it'll come up, the section where it says that it would, prevent parking in swales. I spoke with Alex. That's a typo. It should say medians, not swales. So we will make sure that that gets clarified, when it does come back to you, hopefully in May. Okay? That's everything. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Okay, so do we have some other reply to public comment now? Yep. Other reply to public comment.
I did want to jump in. Thanks to everyone for your comments. Dan particularly, on the autism awareness. I did have this conversation with Chief Cabrera some time ago, and part of their accreditation is autism awareness training, which is doubly important, right? I myself have an amazing autist for a now teenager, 13-year-old. And, you know, so of course we always worry about getting pulled over, you know, not paying attention if a police officer is asking something. So I can assure you that that's part of the accreditation that the department is going through right now. And I love the idea of something going on at the rec center. And I was really happy to see the proclamation. So thank you again for all of that.
Real quickly, a couple of things.
Sure.
So everybody, you know, always appreciate you guys coming out. Nice to hear so much support about the traffic study and addressing road safety here in Biscayne Park. I've been, you know, I brought it up here more than about a year ago. Just to be clear, this is the first baby step. Actually, the first little baby step was just saying, we'll put money in for a traffic data collection study. The next little tiny baby step will be the study itself, which has not even been contracted for. So I don't want anyone to be all excited thinking solutions are, you know, in the making. They're not. We're a long ways from that, but we got the train out of the station. Now we guys got to keep it moving forward. We need to get the study done. We need to look at the results, figure out what the next steps are, and see if there's something that should be addressed. And if it should be addressed, how shall we address it? So just, I want to make sure everyone has reasonable expectations about that. Amy Raymond, your idea to walk around with a sign that you hold up to remind people that the speed limit is 25. Our village attorney represents the village, not residents, but you could probably ask an attorney who would tell you that that would be protected under free speech. So I say walk around and ask and hold your sign up if you want to, and ask for forgiveness later if it's something you shouldn't be doing. And then to the resident who wrote in about the swale parking issue and parking on rights of way, and made a comment about we have so much green space, we shouldn't worry about the rights of way. I would direct you to the Miami-Dade County Save Our Swales program. They actually have a program where they're asking communities to address this very problem, and it's to address stormwater runoff. I have it here pulled up right now. If anybody wants it, I'll be happy to send you a copy. But it is an important thing, and we do need to be having water go down, not across. And Sean O'Neill, the cat item was pushed to May. So hope to see you back here then. We are definitely listening to you and to everybody on both sides of that issue. Thank you, folks.
Just about everything I wanted to cover was covered already, but Dan, I would like to say that that was a fantastic suggestion about the autism resources. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to hearing how we can do that. I think that would be very valuable. And thank you to everyone who commented. I really enjoy hearing and seeing increased involvement in public comment. So thank you to everyone who took the time. If there are no other replies at this time, I'd like to go ahead and move on to our reports, and we will start with our village boards.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole, Chair of the Arts and Culture Board here in Biscayne Park. I just wanted to give a quick recap of our last two events that we had. We had on March 25th, Earth Hour, right here outside of the log cabin. And it was a really lovely event. We had a great turnout of residents, and we had an awesome band, a folk band that performed. And we turned off the lights at 8:30. We had a really wonderful speaker from the village as well who came and just spoke a little bit about the importance of environmentalism and ecology here in Biscayne Park. And so it was a really lovely event. So thank you to everyone who came out, and it's something that we do every year. So it was a lot of fun. And then of course we had Jazz Fest. We had Jazz in the Park this past Saturday. And wow, it was even better than last year. It was a ton of fun. We had several Grammy Award winning artists. We were able to actually bring in this year combos, the top combos from both Miami Arts Charter High School and as well New World School of the Arts, in addition to Broward College, their top combo. And that was really, really awesome because the kids performed and then they stayed like the entire festival and just watch professional artists. They got to hang out with us. There was like a crowd of high schoolers behind Steven Scott, our headliner, like watching him play. And it was really, really fantastic because for the musical aspect, you know, it's very important to me to get the community involved with music, and especially with kids and the next generation of musicians. So that was really touching to me. And then also, the residents came out. It was just amazing because people came prepared this year. They came with their blankets, they had games, people had coolers, they had their dogs, like everything. And what was really interesting as opposed to last year was that there was a consistent crowd the whole event. We were a little concerned because it was 2 hours longer than last year. But the crowd was consistent and people came at 4 and they hung out the whole time. And we did have about like a 15-minute drizzle, which gave me a panic attack, but it was fine. But all the people just pulled out umbrellas and just sat there and just waited for it to stop. And I thought that was so amazing. People came out there was like a guy wearing a Miles Davis shirt, like people came out ready to listen to some jazz, and that was really cool. We had an awesome selection of local vendors as well. The vendors were really happy. They were even like, at the end, we had a New Orleans style brass band, and they strolled and walked around, and there was like a parade with everybody, and even some of like the vendors were like walking around too. And so it was, and also this year there was a lot of babies and little kids, which is awesome because, and even like in the front, there was like, even towards 10 o'clock, there was like a crowd of little kids right in the front of the stage watching the musicians and playing and dancing and like pretending they had drumsticks. And that was just really heartwarming because this event, you know, as much as we want it to be an important cultural event with incredible music, it's about community engagement. And that's everything that the Arts and Culture Board is about. So we were really proud to have an event that was engaging from babies up until our eldest residents, and people came and had a good time and relaxed and did something fun that is unusual for this area. So we'll definitely be back next year again. But thank you to everyone. I wanted to thank you especially to the Arts and Culture Board. I have an amazing team of ladies. They are just kicking butt this year. I mean, I think that we've had a really good events. Organized, we're ambitious, but we're getting stuff done and learning each time. So especially Martha, Barbara, Lori, Sarah, and Natalia, who just had a baby and still is like already back at our meetings. It's really amazing to have a team that is just so awesome and so willing to get stuff done and so creative, and it makes a huge difference because it's a little microcosm of Biscayne Park, but it's one that makes me very, very hopeful. And I want to thank the commission for your support. You guys have been really awesome, especially to Mac, Art, and Veronica, who donated money and time and came and were there. And Mac even helped us in our booth, talking to people and stuff. And so that's really amazing because, you know, without having the local government involved, we can only go so far. So having you guys being so supportive really meant a ton. And to Mario and Shantae for dealing with my million phone calls and emails and very last minute requests. Thank you guys so much. And also Isa and the rec center staff, they're amazing. They just get stuff done so quickly. Anything we need, Isa's right there. And yeah, and Public Works, they were awesome. And also to the police for being there and hanging out and keeping an eye on stuff. And so it's really a privilege to be able to do an event for the city and have so many people enjoy it and participate and be involved and be about it. So we're really excited for next year. Our next event is Mango Fest, but that'll be, I believe, June 17th. So you might see me at the next meeting, or you might not, for a good reason. But keep an eye out for that. But we're really excited for the way things have gone this year with our event schedule, and we're looking forward to next year as well. Thank you, guys.
Hello, I'm Marissa, and I'm the chair of the Parks and Parkway Advisory Board. And I just wanted to give an update on what we discussed in our last meeting in March. I'm just going to go through the minutes because I didn't prepare quickly enough. So one of the topics that we discussed was Girl Scouts. Cecilia Isia is planning to install a pollinator patch in our neighborhood, and she's looking to do a workshop and host at the neighborhood's Earth Day event. And so basically the pollinator patch is a little bit different than what we see around the neighborhood, which is like the butterfly gardens, in which they are basically native plants that already grow on the ground. If you just let the lawn take over and just let it grow naturally, that's basically what a pollinator patch is. Very low resource, low funds, and we just set it out and choose a place. So the board is kind of deciding where to allocate the dedicated space for Cecilia to install. We're hoping to kind of situate it near one of those mosaic benches in which, you know, the Arts and Culture Board, that way you can have like a place to sit and enjoy. So that was one of the topics that we discussed. I think one of the parts of like being on a board is just continuously learning and growing. And for me, being on this board, I literally know nothing. So I actually attended a webinar called Kill Your Lawn. And it was just kind of a great way to educate yourself and ways to kind of change the archaic way of like how we use our private land and also live in harmony with us and nature. And it's not like them versus us. So like we share the same place. And the guy, Benjamin Vogt, he's a well-renowned author of many nature books, but he showed a lot of tips in which we're hoping the board will share those tips in our parks newsletter, hopefully coming out soon. I know we keep talking about it, but it will come out soon. So those tips will hopefully be shared in the newsletter coming soon. And in the last commission meeting, there's all just talk about like budget. And so that got me like all frazzled. Like, all right, we need to spend our budget before they take it away. So I mentioned to our board, you know, just to come with ideas. I know a lot of it is maintenance of the current green space, but also figuring out, you know, even just little parts in the neighborhood to install a tree or a bush, and you know, just come up with ideas. That way we are still implementing new green spaces around in our neighborhood. And then I also mentioned to our board about, you know, the mayor and vice mayor attending the stormwater quality summit recap. And that just got me thinking about how we can potentially install bioswales. Bioswales is one of those terms that like I knew existed when I lived back in Seattle, but it's just kind of those things you take for granted. Then here it's like, oh, there's not really much, you know, bioswales. And one example is that's kind of being implemented is by Sixth and Griffin, and those trees by like the bridge. And I thought it was like a great opportunity to potentially install maybe near the rec center or others like storm drains, basically to kind of like stop the rush of stormwater and kind of allow the you know, pollutants and things to get stopped. But so that was another, you know, suggestion I brought up to our board discussed. And then couple other things. So I did go through all the minutes that our wonderful village clerk had shared with me that the previous board's minutes had, you know, submitted. And I watched some of the YouTube videos. I saw Mario like 2 or 3 years ago. I was like, who is this guy? Like this, who? I had to like reverse. I was like, is this our manager? Anyways, I did my due diligence and I thought what I learned from the minutes was that they did a very good job of having like a maintenance checklist of like, here are the things that we need to be monitoring monthly and just making sure they're still doing well. And having like, basically, we walk the streets, we drive them, just to keep an eye out. So I talked about having common areas to look out for, you know, the log cabin, village hall, rec center, and then our designated butterfly gardens, our large medians, and then, you know, the metals where our village signs are at. So these are just some of the things, like as far as maintenance, just to keep an eye out and we report back. So that was one suggestion. And then the last thing we have, of course, the Earth Day event that is coming up. And so I always notice the arts and culture board there, and there's such an inspiration, like tabling there. I'm like, where are the other boards? And so I suggested to our board that we should participate. I'm trying to get some participation, but if it's me there, I think it's very suitable for the Parks and Parkway board to show face and just connect with our community. And yeah, I think I have some fun ideas planned, especially with my background in planning events. So that's what we discussed. And yeah, thank you.
Any other village board reports this evening? Seeing none, just want to thank you both for presenting to the commission. So let's move on to village commission reports. Do we have any reports from our commissioners? Yes.
All right. So it's my first commission report, so bear with me, please. I wrote it out. So I'm pleased to share my activities that we're going to be going back not just a month, but probably back to January, really. And the first section that I came up with is what I have in the works. And it's a nice follow-up to Marissa's report, actually. So regarding a village bioswale pilot program, I haven't spoken with anyone on the board about it, obviously. Manager Diaz had approached me back in January with a short-term initiative that potentially could run congruently with the longer-term stormwater drainage project. So the development of this pilot program would be for those residents in high flood risk properties and or those streets, right? So in collaboration with our Sustainability and Resilience Board and eventually a design firm that the current RFP that's out there would attract that design firm to us, right? So it's only appropriate that I thank Alexander Bernard and Kate Davis. They are respectively the board chair and vice chair of our volunteer Sustainability and Resilience Board, because they have given me so much of their time, vast expertise, and resource materials towards the development of this program. We are seeking to implement a bioswale rain garden program, kind of like those that are being implemented in some of our affected neighboring municipalities. I can name amazing programs, and I have information, sort of backup materials on all of this that's pretty substantial. Miami Beach, Coral Gables, and Key Largo. They have some really cool solutions and programs already underway. So next steps for us would include using some grant funds for a sustainability study. And as mentioned, the Sustainability and Resilience Board is working with me to narrow down potential sites here in the neighborhood. And then finally, again, via the RFP process, a design firm to create program materials, including educational brochures and design specs for those participating sites. So now that you, ma'am, have mentioned your interest and your knowledge in bioswales, I will be reaching out to you. So more to come on that. Let's see. Continuing on, some things that I would mention as challenges for us. I believe that we continue to face staffing shortages, and I think that affects our ability as an administration and a board to implement some of our initiatives. And I believe it's also left quite a few gaps in our ability to supervise some of our very costly vendor contracts. So I just wanted to mention that in terms of keeping in mind as we work together on developing our strategic plan and prioritizing the village agenda. I really strongly believe that with the strategic plan, we're going to accomplish, targeted recruiting for key roles. And I look forward to those things very much. As part of the progress tab that I have here, we did set the date for the commission retreat. So very much looking forward to all of that moving forward, as well as the push for resident participation that hopefully we'll be able to start moving on in the coming month. Also wanted to mention the regulatory environment and how, we've seen significant challenges in the years past, and it looks to me like our state legislature is poised to do the same thing again. So I know that we're all closely monitoring regulatory developments, and I'd like to acknowledge our city attorney for appreciation and working to always ensure that we comply with these relevant regulations. And again, thank you for the Autism Awareness Proclamation. I am the proud mom of a wonderful, vibrant 13-year-old amazing autist.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Quick back up to the board reports.
So sorry, I even had the notes and I skipped it. The stormwater drainage, project that's going on. I'm sure if you've been monitoring the next door, people are very passionate, which is good. And so I think I've sent my thoughts to the village manager and the recreation manager, and they talked me through that, it's up to the contractors to restore the place back to how it was. So I guess it's just more like keeping communication with the village staff, and then especially with our board who kind of helps oversee the large medians, making sure that the trees, the plants are being cared for in the proper way. And then last thing I'm very proud of, you might have seen a house being remodeled just down on 114th, and they had these massive coral rocks that were just piled, and me just riding my bike, I'm like, those would be perfect for the large medians. And I coordinated with Isa, our recreation manager, and was just trying to get them to pick up the rocks. I believe they did, and so hopefully they will kind of stop more traffic crossing over the median. So that's a bonus. Hopefully we'll see them throughout the village. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So back to board reports. Sorry, commission reports, excuse me.
May I?
Please.
Okay. Marissa, quick question for you. Well, I'm glad you got the rocks because I noticed them as well. When's that staghorn going to get hung up? Yeah. So Public Works is in charge of it now. You guys picked a location. Great. Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure you got a location. Okay, thank you. Mario, there are a couple of things in your report I wanted to ask you questions on. Are you going to go through your report, or should I wait till you do your report and I'll ask them then?
You can,
Okay, so I have a couple of things and then I'll ask a couple of quick questions of Mario. So first of all, on the topic of cats, as a quick update, because the conversation is taking place, I was approached by a village resident who has an adoption agency of some kind to help cats on the street. And we met during so everyone here says I have office hours every Saturday, 12 noon at the rec center. Come see me. She came to see me. We had a really nice conversation. We don't agree on everything regarding cats, but on the matter of taking care of these poor animals, we certainly agreed in getting them spayed. She asked if she could help coordinate a TNR program here at the village. So I discussed it with Mario, and the two of them are now in communication with each other about it. And I'm assuming he'll report back if something happens. It's not a done deal, but she works with an organization out of Palm Beach that traps, neuters, and spays cats and then rehomes them to New England, where apparently there are people who want cats as pets. So these cats get fixed and then they get shipped off to New Hampshire, where they're put up for adoption and find great homes. I know, who knew, right? So our Miami cats, I hope they have, thick blood, because they're going to be moving from Miami to New Hampshire. But, so she's going to coordinate that with Mario. Quick update on that. Tree watering, ongoing issue that we have in the village with trees not getting watered. So I'm hoping that we can stay on top of that better, Mario, because I see them when I walk. I've sent you emails and pictures of some of the trees, and then it seems to be better for a while, and then it's not. But we do have some very distressed trees in some of our new plantings. I'm really happy, and I'll just take a second to talk about this communication thing, Veronica, that you brought on the agenda tonight. I'm so happy to see that when I opened up my agenda. You made my day, because a really recent example of how communication could have made things better was the communication for our land development code meeting. We had a great turnout here. But the messaging from the village wasn't necessarily very strong. And I think some of us kind of picked up some of the slack there and helped share the message among the community. I know a bunch of us did on Nextdoor and other places, and we got people here. So I'm really happy for that. Thank you for bringing that. The topic of recycling comes up every once in a while, and it came up again recently, and I discussed with Mario. And because, do we recycle? I mean, we recycle. Does it really get recycled? Does people report that it gets mixed in with the regular trash? Does Miami-Dade really recycle? How much of it? We're paying a very nominal fee for this service, but we also like to think we're doing something good for the world. So Mario, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you said you were going to do some outreach and possibly report back to us, or maybe even get someone from the county to come talk to us. And I would love to learn what really goes on there with all of that, and whether we're doing something, whether we're pretending to be good people, or whether we really are being good people. Okay, here's kind of a serious thing I've been talking with Valerie about a little bit. Florida's I don't know if it even passed yet. If it didn't, it did pass the concealed carry laws and the changes to them here in the state of Florida. So this concerns me quite a bit. So it's a new law, and it is what it is. But an interesting thing is, I reached out to Mario and to Valerie and said, what is the village's response going to be to this? Is there a response? Do we just kind of wait and see what happens with this new law? And Valerie shared some information, which I thought was very interesting. And I'm going to read, I'm quoting you from your email, Valerie, if you don't mind. Florida does have a law that says you may not carry guns into the meetings of the governing body of a local municipality, which means this meeting, it is against the law for anyone to bring a gun into the meeting. And we have a police officer present who is armed. So he's here to protect us. And no one in this room is allowed to have a gun. Those are the only meetings that rule applies to, is the governing body. But we have board meetings and we have events all over this village, and there are no laws to prevent people from bringing guns into those events. We may not prevent people from bringing a gun into Village Hall, into our rec center. So we can't prevent this from happening. And Valerie is in communications already with our police chief about what we may be able to do or should do. But here's what she says. Under existing Florida law, individuals are permitted to carry concealed firearms in Village Hall, facilities, committee, advisory board meetings, and events. The only exception is for commission meetings. The village is also preempted and prohibited from regulating firearms, even at village facilities and events. The firearm preemption is one of the most stringent in Florida law, and arguably in the country, because it provides that local legislators, the 5 of us, may be held personally, financially liable and removed from office for enacting or causing to be enforced a local ordinance that impinges upon the field of firearm regulation. So only the 5 of us in this room are protected in any way, but the rest of the village is not our board member, not our board meetings. And I don't know how often some of you come to the different board meetings. Some of the code compliance meetings, and especially those meetings, can get contentious, and planning board sometimes can be as well. Our meetings get contentious sometimes, but I want all of you to be aware of that.
But the board people can carry guns.
I'm sorry?
People can carry guns.
Are the board people allowed to carry guns, Valerie, into the meetings? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought you meant in here. Oh, you mean the board meetings? Yeah, great. So they're all great. So maybe we should put that in the budget for next year. Maybe we should provide them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. So this is something we need to think about because we're approaching budget season. And if there are things that we can and need or should do to make this village safe from itself in some ways, then we need to start thinking about what those things might be. Because Valerie advised that some municipalities have metal detectors at entrances, for example. And go ahead, Valerie.
Only for commission meetings.
For commission meetings. So
If you can't stop them.
yeah, yeah. So I just want us all to be aware of this, and as this conversation continues, because Valerie and the chief are talking about it, we need to be aware as we enter budget season. So enough on that. Now, I want to end on something really fun and positive. We benefit enormously from our volunteer boards, and I like to speak to them as often as I can. But in the past week, we have had two boards that have done just standout jobs, and I'm only singling these two out because they did some things recently. Our planning board helped us tremendously with a very productive land development code meeting. So that meeting that we needed to have was productive. In large measure because of what the planning board provided to us and the two members, Gage Hartung and Ed Leva, that were here and participated in the meeting as well. So I just want to remind everyone in the village that we are the beneficiaries of the time and energy and brain power of some really, really smart and dedicated people. That board is populated with some people who are real experts in their fields, and we're lucky to have them. The other board that knocked it out of the park, of course, is our Arts and Culture Board. So for those of you who didn't make it to the Jazz Festival, I mean, truly everything Nicole said and then some, it was just a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous event. They had two events in a row because they had Earth Hour before. But I just want to make sure we're always expressing our gratitude to these boards for the hard work they do. The events that the Arts and Culture Board do, in my opinion, provide the heart and soul of this village. We can make rules and laws and make things run in an orderly fashion, but when it comes down to it, it's those events that really bring a smile to people's faces and make them really happy they live here in Biscayne Park. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other commissioner reports?
I just want to share real quick, it's not a report, but I just want to share with the community that I don't know if you people are aware that the canal that runs through Biscayne Park has a speed limit, right? It's 5 miles an hour. And there's no speed bumps, there's no signs, there's nothing there. And for the last 6-7 months, I've been trying to get with South Florida Water Management. I've talked to everybody at the Florida Wildlife Commission, Manatee Rescue. There was an injured manatee behind our home that swam by, took pictures of it. I sent it to everybody. And it's just really disappointing that although everybody's been really nice, they all say they care about our wildlife. They don't care about our wildlife because there is the amount of boats going through our canals now, speeding through our canals, jet skis at going 30, 40 miles. I mean, it looks like a speedway. And, there's no signage. And all I'm asking for, I'm not asking for any, obviously there's no patrolling in the canal. There's none, zero, zilch. There is no police presence in the canal. There are no Florida wildlife people in the canal. So it's not regulated or monitored. But if, all I've been trying to get is for them to put some signage, because there's no signs. So, if people at least see signs that say no wake or 5 miles an hour, but there's nothing. And it's really disappointing that, a lot of people say that they care about these animals, but nobody cares. Sad. It's really sad.
Art, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
Are there not signs on the bridges? I'm kind of
No.
flabbergasted that there are no signs out there.
No,
I assumed there would be.
Back up and down there, there's a sign way down that somewhere, but there's no there's no signage, no. So to answer your question, there's no sign on the bridge.
I'll help you make some signs.
Yeah, right.
Make some signs and laminate them and put them in the yards. I'm
I
sure
have-
your
I
neighbors
have-
would do it.
I have manatee signs on my deck, on my dock, but it's just insane.
I thought that they had responded to you that they were policing the
Yeah,
canal.
a lot of
The
people
last I
said a
recall.
lot of things and nobody's done anything about it.
So I have two questions for you.
Yes.
I don't want to name a name here in a live meeting, but are you aware that there's an officer related to that field who lives here in the village?
I spoke to the assistant chief in Tallahassee.
Okay, there's a
So
person.
if I
who lives
couldn't
in
get that guy to do anything, I don't know if the guy here, I don't know what his
share a
role
contact.
is.
I'll share contact. I think, I don't want to overstate what he does, but I think he's in charge of this area and he lives here in Biscayne Park.
I'd love to talk to him because
Okay, I'll share
his
information.
chief didn't do anything.
Okay, and do we not have I always forget what an MOA stand, memo of understanding, MOU, what is it? Don't we have something like that where our police force helps out with waterway kind of stuff that you could report it to the police? No?
Oh, the problem is, Mac, that, like jet skis, for instance, right?
Yeah.
They'll zoom going down 30, 40 miles an hour going that way, and they'll zoom right back going that way.
Because they dead end down there.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but they go so fast. I mean, there's just, how do you catch them,
Right.
other than putting a net or a string across or something? With a wire.
I'll share that name with you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So there are a few things that I'd like to provide updates on. The first of which being a follow-up on the FAA Megaplex issue. I've been in contact with one of the commissioners in North Bay Village. We're working together to put together a draft letter that residents can use, put in some personal information, maybe some of their own experiences. And I had recommended we set up like a free email account, like a Gmail account, to collect them all and then forward them on from there. That commissioner, she's still working on it. I offered to take it over from her since I'd like to get it done. So I expect to follow up with her again later this week. So we're moving forward. Last week, at the request of the Miami Shores Chamber of Commerce, I attended one of their meetings since I was informed that Biscayne Park has an executive board seat, which I was not previously aware. So I decided that we should go and say that, we have a presence and we'd like to kind of engage together and form a good relationship with our neighbors. It was a brief meeting, but really it provided me an opportunity to speak with their executive board about promoting our village events, attracting more people to come and benefit our local vendors, maybe attracting more people, more vendors to come and just kind of cross promote with them. I did at the time, it was only a few days in advance, but I did get a chance to tell them about the Jazz in the Park event. They said that they were promoting it for us, which was nice. So I hope to continue that relationship and go and sit with the executive board and continue to try and work with them and benefit our communities however possible. So moving on to I'm just going to jump down to the traffic report that we received. I believe it was sent out, and I know it's attached to our agenda as a backup item. As a brief reminder, this is the traffic study that was the result of the study in the meeting that we had with the Developers Council with respect to that proposed apartment building up here in North Miami. And I'm going to oversimplify a very long and complicated report with their findings that they don't expect it to impact us adversely. However, there is a sentence in that report that does concern me a little bit. And I did send another email to the attorney and ask for some follow-up because it does say that they've determined that the roadways will not be significantly impacted by the proposed land use designation change and that our roads have the capacity to accommodate the expected traffic demand. That just means, in my reading, that there's going to be more traffic and they say you guys can handle it. And there's really not a whole lot of additional support there.
Road's got it. Your
Yeah,
roads can do it.
yeah. So I think that warrants a little further discussion. And I did not hear back when I sent another email, so it's time for follow-up and say, I know this isn't impending, it's not happening in the next couple of weeks, but it's something that I'd like to just kind of talk a little bit more with them about. I don't know timing wise how that kind of aligns with our own traffic study and whether our traffic study can benefit them, but it's something that I'd like to discuss with them. So they say that there's really no impact discussed, but it sounds to me like they're likely. So follow-up meeting warranted. So that very briefly takes care of the traffic report unless there's any other questions or discussions item on it.
Can I just mention something really quickly? Not to be, first of all, I'm glad you also saw that little phrase. So I'm like, ding, 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 ding. There's the CYS phrase, did I say S, CYA? I meant to say CYA. Good Lord. CYA phrase that they, you know, they want to add in something. And to sound like a not to sound like a skeptic, but this was hired by the this was a firm hired by the developer to provide a report for them. And the whole thing sounds very much like everything's going to be just dandy. And the only road that they actually measured in Biscayne Park was 6th Avenue between 111th and 121st. So it's the only street they even took a look at. There was no consideration to our interior streets. There were very specific roadways that they even measured. So they looked at 6th Avenue and then said, our roads can handle whatever will come. Take it with a grain of salt.
Right, yeah, certainly, I think that's a very important part. So, yeah, I will be speaking with them again and hope that they'll be willing to meet with us, second time. So, there was one other thing, as we kind of, as long as, well, I'll ask if there's any other reports from the commission at this time. I don't think so. There was one question I had, as part of our manager's report, so I'll wait for you to start with that, Mr. Manager, and in the interim, ask our village attorney if you have a report for us. Okay. So coming to our manager's report, there was an item that we had discussed, and I was hoping that our manager could give us an update on it before you get into the bulk of your report. Would you mind providing us with an update on the issue, the drain construction and the impact it's had on our medians and our trees, please?
Sure. As indicated in the report, where we are with that project right now is the contractor has now finalized all the trench work for the installation of pipe and the manholes and so forth. What's pending now is the finalization of the asphalt and the road restoration, and then the restoration of the medians and any other properties that may have been damaged during construction. As I've reported and spoke to all of you individually as well as in emails, we had SFM come out and they had a arborist come and inspect the medians, specifically, well, the entire project area, but they paid particular attention to southwest, northeast 115th and northeast 10th Avenues, where a lot of equipment was. There were several aspects that the arborists indicated that they needed to follow up to correct. In various trees where they hit branches or sheared or whatnot, one of the requirements is to have a tree trimming company, an arborist, come out and trim the branches back to where they are, so that they're not stayed there. Another is irrigation of the medians to help with the compaction of the soils and everything that was there. And then the third aspect is requesting a bond of about $50,000 in order for the next 18 to 24 months. So I just put it at 24 months. So that if any of the trees within the median, and there were 38 that were identified, because some of the damage of the root system, we won't be able to see that right now, or what the long-term effect is it on the tree. The bond will help cover at least for 24 months. And he felt that anything after 24 months, if the tree survived that long, it will continue to survive. So those are the three things. Right now, we are finalizing the letter per the contract that we will issue to them, saying that they need to cure this within a certain time period. If they do not cure it within a certain time period, then the contract authorizes the village to hire a company and use the money from the contract to follow through with whatever cure needs to occur.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
That was one of the things I want to ask you a question about. Cure regarding the trees specifically?
For the restoration of the medians and stuff like that, yeah.
So something that I talked to Mari about when we discussed this was, I mean, the bond is basically, a bond doesn't get touched unless there's damage. No? Okay, I won't. He just shook me off. Okay, got it.
Don't want to give out any
Okay.
negotiating leverage or anything.
Mario, how are the new hours working at the log cabin?
They are great.
Yeah.
And so on Fridays, one of the things that we've asked, that I've been asking the staff, is to kind of keep me updated of some of the work that we're able to do that is different than throughout the week. And just using the building department, because I think that's going to be the most glaring aspect. And we have our code officers here, so they can even talk to you about it as well. But in the building department, throughout the week, they can probably do one stamping of plans saying this is ready to go. Where on Friday they can do 3 to 4. And so that's a huge increase. And just on a Friday afternoon by itself, that's from 12 to 5. So that's been a big help. Also, one of the big problems that we had was people weren't getting their phone calls returned. They weren't getting their emails returned. And it's quite a lot when you have people walking in, asking for updates because they haven't gotten from their emails. Plus you're trying to process plans. Plus you're trying to get everything from the planning. So there was a lot going on. Now that we have what I kind of call the quiet time, the building department, this past Friday, they had 0 pending emails on Friday. And when they left, they still had 0 pending emails. And phone calls were returned. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. Dina, who is our building clerk right now, she took over for SB when SB took a new position in another city. We've already been getting amazing compliments for her follow-up and her candor. The building department is starting to get into that rhythm of where we want it to be. So the office hours are doing amazing. It also, beyond just the work, one of the things that I've tried to create within the village for the past 2.5 years is a more positive work environment, a culture that is more positive. And Friday afternoons, you just see the visible stress. Not that it goes away, but it just kind of like the body language changes, and they're like, okay, I can focus on these things and not have to worry about running to answer the phone and open the door or do anything like that. So it's been very, very positive. And I'd like to continue that. And I was going to put something a little bit later this year to give you from each department what their feelings were, so that you can hear from different staff members of how it benefits them. But it's been very beneficial for the staff. And on sometimes even staff have started to try to find, if I'm going to schedule a doctor's appointment or something like that, I'm gonna try to do it on Friday because there's more leeway. Now the office is closed, so I can use that time as well. So it's benefited us in more than just one way.
That's good to hear. And I've gotten 0 complaints. So there's another statistic you can add to your report.
Awesome.
When did that start?
February 1st.
It's 2 months.
In 2 months, correct. Since we're just on the question portion, do we just want to go through any other questions? Okay. Any?
Other report?
Yeah.
Let me see.
No, it's totally fine.
Threw everybody off.
No, totally fine. So also in the report, we have our unaudited, just something that I wanted to point out to you all. The unaudited financials are on there. Overall, we're keeping a close eye on several aspects, but one of the things that I was kind of happy to see, if you look at the building fund revenue and expenditures, which is page 9 of 17 of those, through February 28th, we're showing $190,494 of revenue. And we're also seeing the expenditures of $190,665. So we're just slightly overspending on there, but I think as the new fee schedule has been taking a hold and everything's been going on, we're starting to kind of see that kind of being balanced out. So I think that's a positive thing as well. I know we have a couple items that are addressing budget expenditures as well, but I just wanted to kind of point this out. And I know that our year agreement for the revenue split is going to be up later this summer. I've already been in communication with CAP, and they're doing their analysis to see if the revenue split is on point or if it needs to be addressed. And so we'll get that a little bit closer to the budget season. But I think we're in good shape right now. So I like how everything is kind of tracking at the moment.
All right, so I have a couple of things. So in terms of the grants, so there is a lot of listed on that they're being pursued. And one of the concerns I was thinking about is how do we approach this? How do we define what are we after? So now that we're getting closer and closer to budget season, I think it's important for us to have in mind with all the community feedback we're gonna get, what's the ratio of winning this thing? So for every dollar we put, how much money we get, how successful we've been in the past, and should we increase actually more money for the grant writers if it's already working towards those projects that we might identify in the community workshop? So that's on grants. On that one,
Sure.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer or just
Yes,
wait until you
please,
get the
go
other
ahead.
one as well?
Go ahead. No,
Okay.
I have another one related to grants.
Oh, then I'll wait, Vice Mayor. I'm sorry.
Just to close it up, the one specific related to trees we spoke about with Mario. We've seen some of the trees go through some districts. Sorry, my English is horrendous today. I woke up in Spanish mode today. So I am concerned how we approach these grants and how we complete the life cycle of making sure that they're planted, protected on the long-term basis. We have seen, one question I had from Mario during this report was how many how many trees did we get with the last grant? How many are in good condition? What's the percentage? So that's something we need to work with, because I think we need to understand there's some that might die naturally because, they just are not good within the species. I don't know anything. So please, I'm speaking out here of absolutely no knowledge on anything green. So we need to understand. So when we go for this, out of the 120, we lose 10. That's a normal thing. Okay. Is that what we are? I don't know where we are. I think more into supervision related to this area. It's needed. And I know we don't have it more than SFM right now as a provider that we hire. Not specifically related to grants. So maybe something in relationship with the boards is something that we were discussing. An idea was even naming the trees and providing people to recognize Pedro is not doing so good. I don't know. It's a way to maybe ask for help because we're small. We need the help from everybody. So again, I think when we look into this, Mario, I'm just kind of highlighting our conversation, but I think I wanted to discuss it openly with the commission that I would like to see this as a great opportunity to see what are we looking for in the next budget season? Do we have the capability to ask for more, knowing that we have commitments behind each one of them? And do this reflect a long-term kind of commitment in the case of the trees?
Absolutely. Great questions, Vice Mayor. So with regards to the Neat Street, this is a grant that, to the credit of the Park and Parkway Board, Barbara Kuehl, David Raymond, and others, which I'm sorry that your name is escaping my mind right now. I can't believe it. I'm really sorry. The former board is, as I was relate. 2 years, they applied, and this was prior to me coming on board. They had applied for the Neat Street grant and were able to get it. They were able to plant about 120 trees throughout the village. Last year, we did not apply for the grant at my request, and the board agreed. At that moment, it was like, look, we need to kind of take a step back and kind of reset where we're looking for and what we're trying to do. One of our priorities was taking down the Australian pines that were being categorized as these are dangerous to have up. So the ideal was, okay, once those comes down, then we'll look to replace those with again, this grant. So this grant right now is, after a year hiatus, we just got word last week that we got it. And that, the locations that we picked and the species that we picked were in coordination with the Parks and Parkway, the new board, Mariah and her group. We used the species that were previously approved by the Parks and Parkway and then reapproved by the current Parks and Parkway in previous grants. The 120 trees are way past establishment. So Public Works does watering twice a week. And so if we need some to go out, and I said we will go look through all of those trees and take a look at that. We'll do that assessment again. I know you had an idea of working with Parks and Parkway to come up with a, and they mentioned it today here, maybe there's a different document of more of another like maintenance checklist book or whatever the case. Absolutely willing. ISA's attending all of their meetings and working with them. So we'll be glad to move that forward. And so we'll move that forward as well. With regards to grants, we picked the grants based on what the budget and what the commission priorities are with regards to the yearly budget. And so most of the grants require matching funds. And so we can raise the contract for the grant, but that doesn't mean that we'll be able to match all the funding requirements for the grant. So for Neat Street, it's a 50% match. And so if they, we identified essentially $10,000 or a little bit over $10,000, they would reimburse us about $5,000. The vulnerability grant that we got last year, which from the state was for $85,000, that's reimbursed. So we got to spend the $85,000 before they give us $85,000. Same with the storm drain project for the $350. Same with the $50,000 or $60,000, depending on the year, for the freebie, and so forth. So that's going to limit how many grants we can go after and what we can apply. We don't have a guarantee that because we applied, we will get a grant. It comes down to funding. It comes down to applications, what projects they feel are better than others, and so forth. So just increasing and doing more applications doesn't mean that we'll get more money. However, part of the conversation that needs to occur is just like when the county does any type of mass transit projects. It's nice to say that we're going to extend Metro Rail and we're going to do the people mover. But if there's no operational plan behind it, then everything is a waste of money because the operations won't carry through, the maintenance isn't carried through, all of that kind of stuff. With the grants, part of it, when you get free money, there are strings attached. And so you need a certain amount of grant management that goes with it. Right now, our grant writer is doing grant management for our freebie grants. They are helping us with our vulnerability grants and our Neat Street grant, right? So they're going through to make sure that we're getting all the pay requisitions, the contracts, the documents that are needed, the backup for the reimbursement request, and then submitting those things for us. Those are a lot of hours that go into it to be able to maintain. So that's a big help. So if we increase the applications and we get more grant money, we also kind of have to proportionally increase the management aspect of it as well. And so right now, the ones that are listed in my report, freebie, we're going to continue going after that. Without the DOT freebie contract, we won't be able to afford it. CITT does not give us enough money to maintain the contract unless we use 85–90% of CITT money towards that. And the goal is to use CITT money for infrastructure and road as much as we are allowed. So that continues going, and it's a year over year. The DOT also came out with a grant. It's part of the $700 million that the state now has for infrastructure and all these other things. So part of that Safer Roads grant, that would allow for the traffic calming study, if we get it, to be paid for through grant funds. And that could be, we've had this discussion before, that can be, we've had initial quotes from 100 something over $300,000. And that's a big ask for a village our size. So if we can go after grant money or state money with that, that would be a big help. The bioswales is another aspect, environmental, something that the state loves to see us going after, especially when we're asking for money. They want to see that we're kind of in line with what the county and the state is going after. The bioswales, all of that could really be a big support from DEP. So again, we've aligned everything with what we've said we need throughout the village, whether it's infrastructure, improvement to the parks, which is the FERDAP grant, all of those things. That's how we've kind of done it in the past. Now, I'm hoping that the strategic vision plan, which someone said it was my plan, and I appreciate it, but it's not my plan, it's your plan, is going to help further put those priorities for us so that we know what are the areas that the community and that we need to continue moving forward. It could just be trying to fill those infrastructure gaps. It could be some more. The one thing that we did see that is not from state or federal or county is the firehouse subs grants. So the fast food chain Firehouse Subs, that was started by a firefighter, and they have a certain amount every year that they give to help first responders and so forth. So they have where they would purchase and give the village automated external defibrillators, which is something that we saw the chief really excited about when we bought a couple just that our officers to have. So we're hoping that we could win that grant and be able to then outfit all of our police vehicles with it, so that they don't have to check it out or check it in, or, oh, I don't have it, it's so-and-so. So we're hoping to be able to do that. And then this beautiful log cabin that we have here, we need to do some improvements. To what extent, I have no idea. I have someone who's going to do a preliminary look before going and getting a historical architecture to come and do a formal evaluation of the building. Several people have told me there's some issues over on the roof when our public works has gone up to address some of the dead lizards that somehow get into some pipes and stuff that come from the roof. They're saying some of these shingles don't look good. We're going to have to do something. So we're trying to move forward in that aspect. Our windows, beautiful. They look great, but they're not impact either. I'm worried if when we come with a hurricane, especially having a big tree, oak tree next to us, branches come out and stuff like that during a hurricane, or something's flying and it hits some of the glass, then all of a sudden we start getting more wind into the cabin. It could create even further damage. So there's been a few people who have talked to me like there's a way to keep it that way, but then you can put impact, you can make them impact. So we're just taking an initial look so that we can go after a grant to see how much of it we can get so that we can address any needs that the log cabin might have and preserve it as best as we can. So that's how we've identified and how and why we've gone after the type of grants that we have.
No, and it makes you want more because we see it all kind of being achieved through that. So I think that's the question, is how much more is it possible? What are our constraints within our budget to think, whether the grant writer can help us more, and then where do we pull to maximize every dollar that we invest with that? So, and then if I can just ask one more question regarding Genco. I know the face of the project is now going into paving the streets on 11th as an example. And the concern has been regarding the trees, how we protect the trees. Phase 1 was very damaging to some of the areas and some of the trees. I know the arborist is on your report, you say, on assessing what the damage was. How do we help the process of not going through machinery on the paving phase of the project on top of trees again and How do we go about?
The biggest damage came from the excavators that were digging the trenches for the project. The paving operations is a little bit different, but the machinery is still big, right? And so we have very confined spaces, and there's certain things that the machine is what is used. They're not going to go with what's called cold patch and which is almost like getting a bag of cement, pouring some water and stirring it by hand. It's going to be hot asphalt, which is going to last a lot longer. And they're in very confined spaces. However, the machine is not, it's not high like the excavator is, where you have an arm that goes up, and as far down as it goes down, it goes up as well. So it's very different. It's a lot wider than it is taller.
They're heavy machinery, so we're gonna be.
But it's yeah, we're not going to be able to get away from that. And in any construction, you're going to have a certain amount that it kind of is what it is. We're looking for the next phase, which would be funded by the federal dollars. We'll have the designers take a look and make sure that they incorporate on their RFPs, any issues on staging area. It doesn't look like, I don't know if the church is willing to lease out their land again. But it doesn't look like the village will have enough space for a staging area. If we go in the medians and we put fencing around the root system of the trees, then there's no room within the medians to put the machinery or some of the materials and stuff like that. So, that will be something that we'll push onto the contractor. They're going to have to figure out how they can build that project without having those things with them. And then we'll see, and we'll get back, what kind of response we get back, or, we might hear back like, yeah, we're interested, but we can't work under these things. And that's something for the village to then consider at that point, but we'll make sure that's a point of an. However, I will tell the commission, and I will say it to the community, the day that this community goes through a septic to sewer conversion, your canopy for the most part is going to be gone. Because when we only went down less than 10 feet to install these French drains. When you're talking about a gravity sewer system, some of these pipes are more than 25 feet down. And again, that arm that goes down has to go up. And so if the arm has to go 25 feet down, that means it's a bigger excavator than what we had on the project now. And you're talking about at least 25 vertical up on those arms. And so that canopy will have to be trimmed much higher up. The width of those, you're going to have trench boxes, you're going to have pile driving to ensure the trench doesn't collapse while people are trying to install. A lot of times, if you're putting in gravity sewer with the water table that there's two things that they end up doing. One is either having a pump running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to move the water from the ground somewhere else, or they do diving where the guy has an air hose, can't see, and everything is kind of installed by hand, and then they do the laser. So that type of construction is going to be very, very, very disruptive in the very tight quarters that we have throughout the village. We'll do the best we can for the next phase of the storm, which isn't that impactful compared to septic to sewer, but it's just pre-warning, that construction is not easy. I went through it when Fort Lauderdale did theirs. That's where I started my career. And with the water table that it was up there and some of the issues that they had, in one area, they had an entire front yard start collapsing. And people were scared that their house was going to collapse because everything started going in, and they were able to save the house, but it was a big ordeal.
If I may, we'll cross that bridge when we get
Yeah.
there. That's years, and that's not in the distant horizon. But we're going to repave the roads now, so.
Yes, sir.
So I really am hoping that every care will be taken to make sure that we don't cause any more damage in that process. And I think part of that, of course, we rely on staff to be monitoring what's going on with the vendor. The vendor did some things they shouldn't have done. and they cause some damage that they're now going to have to be held responsible for. I'd rather prevent the damage than have to deal with it on the back end. A bond is great. It sounds great in theory. I don't want the trees damaged. So I would hope that staff is, meeting with the vendor every day on site, wherever they're supposed to be, to walk through the specifics on this block. This is what you have to watch out for. Look, not to minimize, not to make it sound so easy, but when I have work done at my house, we had a pool put in. We had a drain field put in our backyard. No heavy, it was in the, I wrote it in the contract. No heavy equipment on the property unless I'm here. Period. So I had to be there watching, and trust me, I was on them like a hawk. So we need to manage the vendor, not have the vendor manage us. And then we respond after the fact and they go, Biscayne Park got upset with us, whatever. We'll give them a bond and hopefully the trees are okay. So I'd like to see us get through the repaving with no problems at all, because we have another big one coming up that's going to be starting really soon. And we don't want to be taking several steps forward and then damaging.
Machinery is completely different than what is done for the trenching. Like I said, it's a wider machine. It's not as tall. But I will never guarantee that there will never be an issue.
Sorry, we know you can't guarantee that, but I'm just hoping that we are minding it every possible way.
We do mind it, sir, and we talk to them all the time.
But the vendor didn't do a good job minding it, and look what happened as a result. We have 38 damaged trees.
Completely understand, but
38.
I can't control them.
I'm sorry, but that can't be the last thing said on the topic. You can control them, Mario. You're the manager of the village and you monitor our vendors and their contracts.
And we hold them to the contract, but I am not there holding their hand while they do the job. I can't control
But when
that.
you say things like that, it kind of sounds like, well, whatever happens, happens, and we'll deal with it after the fact. I really don't like that attitude necessarily. So I just have to say that if you're going to end it with something like that, I'm going to end it there.
Do we have anything further for the manager report at this time?
Thank you.
Is that it for the manager report?
Does that conclude the manager report?
Mario?
Yes.
Mario, I just got a quick question. I think you mentioned that you had won some kind of an award or something. What was that award that you meant that you?
Thank you. Yes, the Florida City and County Managers Association has recognized me as a 2023 Rising Star. That is given to those who they feel have had a big impact within the past year and anticipate that they will be top performers within the industry for many years to come.
Good. I just wanted to congratulate you.
Thank you.
That's an awesome recognition. So congrats.
Other in your cap.
Remember us when you're in big places.
You're in Tallahassee.
Congratulations, Mario. Okay, well, having concluded the manager's report, let's move on to the consent agenda, which is item 9. So remember, we have an amended consent agenda. We removed item 9D. So
Jonathan, if I may, I'm the one that pulled that off because there was a specific wording thing in there and the lawyer, Valerie, the lawyer, we have a couple of them in here, has since advised me by email that she looked into something for me and sent me information that the wording as it is okay. If you want to put that back on the consent, we're allowed to do that. We can make a change. If you want to put that back on consent, we can push it straight through.
sure, okay, well, why don't we do that then? So further amending the consent agenda to
Motion to
Restore the
approve the amended consent agenda.
restore the original consent agenda. So we have a motion from Commissioner Kennedy. We have a second. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Veronica, you can say aye?
Okay. So revisiting the consent agenda as amended with 9D restored. Do we have a motion to approve in a second the amended consented agenda? And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the amended consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to our amended section 10, that remember removed 10C, D, and E. So the only two we have remaining for our ordinance is 10A and 10B. So moving on to item 10A, ordinance number 2023-03. Madam Attorney, would you please read the ordinance onto the record for us?
Yes, an ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance number 2022-09 to transfer funds from the village's reserve to the administration line item expenditures and further budget amendments to the capital projects fund, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Do we have any public comments on this ordinance? None. Is there any, none present? Is there any on Zoom?
If there's anybody on Zoom, which we only have one resident, that wishes to make a public comment, please hit the raise hand icon on the bottom of the toolbar. Mr. Mayor, I see none.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'd like to request a motion, a second, to approve ordinance number 2023-03, second reading.
Motion to approve ordinance 2023-03.
Thank you, Commissioner Kenny. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Commissioner Oliveira, thank you. And we'll move on to commission discussion on this item.
I have one quick thing. Section 2, approving budget amendment. It says budget ordinance number 2023-XX. That needs to be completed with -03.
And Madam Attorney, can we make that,
Yes.
that revision?
Yeah, it'll be
assuming
like
it
a
passes?
scrivener's error. Yeah, it can be corrected.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Is there any other commission discussion on this ordinance item at this time? Hearing none? Okay, so Madam Clerk, could we please call for a roll call vote?
Mayor Groth.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Amsler,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliveira,
Yes.
Mayor ordinance number 2023-03, budget amendment passes second reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, moving on to item 10B, which is ordinance number 2023-04. Madam Attorney, would you please read this ordinance on the record for us?
An ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance number 2022-09 to transfer funds from the village's unassigned fund balance appropriation, parenthetical reserve, close parenthetical, to the budget amendments to the building fund, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Do we have any public comment on item 10B? None present. Do we have any on Zoom, Mr. Manager?
If there's anybody on Zoom that wishes to have a public comment, please hit the raise hand icon on the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. Mr. Mayor, I see none.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to request a motion, a second, to approve ordinance number 2023-04.
Make a motion to approve 2023-04.
Thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. I just wanted to bring to the commission and to the public's attention, there is one slight change compared from the first reading to now the second reading. Commission, if you'll remember, part of the ordinance was to create a line item to continue the digitalization of the records that we have at Village Hall. And that was part of the first reading. However, taking a look at the budget as we were preparing the item, there were two things that I recognized that we were missing. I then spoke to our legal department. It does not change the title, so we were able to add it on here. And that is creating a line item expenditure within the building fund for the code department expenditures of approximately $50,000. This is in line with the analysis of what we did and what we're we've modified for the building fund from 2016 through 2021, which we're showing that the code department has various expenditures under the building department, whether it's inspection for code violations or any of the reoccupancy or short-term vacation rentals or anything like that. Those are all correlated to work with the building department. And so the building department can pay the village for that. So we've put that line item to be consistent with the previous years, which is what we're memorializing now. The third expenditure line item is to potentially fund going to the unsafe structure board with Miami-Dade County for the property at 826 Northeast 121st Street. We're putting a total of $30,000. That is based on the initial quote that our previous building official mentioned, and that should include not only going to the structures board, but also the demo. We're putting 30,000. I don't know if that will be enough, if that will be everything, if that's too much. We'll first go and try to get approval for the unsafe, and then that will come back with whatever the decision is to the commission to see if we want to move forward with any type of demolition or moving that project forward. And when we do that, then we'll come back more with a with a quote and see if that would be enough. But I wanted to point out these two line items since they are different since first reading. Thank you.
We have a second, so we're in commission discussion at this point. So just for some clarity on that point, on the final line item about the demolition for that property, this isn't us, the commission saying that we are approving expenditure of this amount of money. This is
No.
right.
This is just
find out how much
line
it will
item.
ultimately cost. It will come back to us before we decide whether to
Correct.
put that money on.
Yes, this is just creating an expenditure line item within the budget. But anything, especially because of the nature it is, I would be bringing it back. But because of the value, it would have to come back to the commission regardless.
Understood. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that point. Is there any other commission discussion on this ordinance?
One quick thing. Valerie, since we changed some content, is the heading and the advertisement suffice?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion on this item at this time? Okay, hearing none. Madam Clerk, could we please call for a roll?
Mayor Groth,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Amsler, Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Kennedy.
Yes.
Commissioner Oliveira.
Yes.
Mayor, ordinance number 2023-04, Building Fund Budget Amendment passes second reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. As the remaining ordinances have been moved off of our agenda for this evening and seeing nothing under Section 11 for resolutions, we'll move into Section 12, discussion of old business, which is item 12A, Village Code Enforcement. Commissioner Kennedy.
Thank you. Okay, so this item has been on the agenda a couple of times and got pushed forward, so I'm glad we're addressing it tonight. Art, I specifically took it off the last meeting agenda because you couldn't attend, and I wanted to make sure you were here to be part of this discussion, so it got delayed another month. The first thing I want to say is nothing that I say here tonight about this topic is a criticism of anything to do with our current code staff or the people that are here to report to us tonight. But I wanted to bring this topic up because it is an important topic. At the January meeting, I originally added this item so everyone would have time to arrive for a discussion about the goals, expectations, and plans and accountability for code compliance. This village and all communities deserve a code department to deliver on very reasonable and attainable mission, as stated in our documents. We give $160,000 in this fiscal year for code compliance. Without a highly functioning code department, we'll never claim our rightful position as one of the preferred communities here in northeastern Miami-Dade County. The Village Code Compliance Department, presently under the direction of our police department, which I understand may be changing, and I'm assuming that'll be something Mario will discuss with us tonight, accounts for 4% of our fiscal budget, just to kind of make sure everyone's clear on that. Per the village website, the mission of the department is to work alongside our community to maintain and improve the safety and quality of life for all Village of Biscayne Park residents. However, in the 7 years that I've lived here in Biscayne Park, and that's under 4 different managers and 6 different commissions, code compliance has struggled to operate effectively and to meet our mission for the department. So this is an ongoing battle, it seems, where it's 3 steps forwards and 2 steps back, or sometimes it feels like 3 steps forward and 3 steps back, and then we stop and stand in place for a while. And again, this is not a statement about what's going on here presently, but I'm looking towards the future, and I'm looking at the near distant past in the 7 years that I've lived here, and I see a code department that isn't delivering on its mission. So that's why I wanted to bring this up tonight, so we could all discuss this. We can discuss how important we think it is. Janie Anderson talked to it tonight more eloquently than I am about, you know, what the goals are for this department and what some of the history is. So here's some things that I would like to hear discussed, and I know Mario is going to talk, and Doreen is here, and I think they're prepared to discuss some things with us, because I know they are working on some things, and I would like the community to hear it from staff directly, because this is one of the, you know, I get many complaints about code, about specific violations, and about how the department appears to be running or not running. So I'd like everyone to be able to hear this report. Some of the things that have happened recently, we have had, and this is not the first time it's happened, we've had a lot of cases thrown out when they get to the code compliance board, because things were not processed properly, paperwork wasn't filled out properly, evidence wasn't maintained properly, taken properly, presented properly. Cases are heard, cases are thrown out. And not that I want to hear that the big bad village is coming down on people, but I don't want cases being thrown out because of procedural things. If a case is being dismissed, I'd like it to be because there's no merit to the case, not because paperwork wasn't filled out properly and the board can't do its job because they don't have the means to do it with. That happened recently, and it's not the first time that it happened. And Doreen, I know you're going to speak to this, but I was there at some of the meetings where you basically almost, it felt like, wiped out the entire agenda and said, these cases can't be heard. This was all done incorrectly, and these cases have to be thrown out. That wasn't the first time it's happened in this village. Another ongoing issue is construction projects. They're kind of hiding in plain sight. Some of these are multiple code violators, and the ongoing citations seem to not be being being cited. Trash cans. Hundreds of trash cans out on any given day, out where they're not supposed to be. So trash cans aren't supposed to not only be out at the street, they're to be put away out of sight behind the house or behind a fence. And when I walk this village, and I get this complaint constantly from people. And by the way, code is one of those things that people don't like to come complain about in public, because they don't be the ones to say it. But boy, when they get my ear, do I hear it? And I don't disagree with them on most of it. But trash cans all over the place. Communication. And I know, Veronica, it's a topic that we're going to discuss of yours later. And yes, we should be getting to that. I hope we do. But here's another example of where we fail in terms of communication. I dare say that the majority or a lot of the code citations that are heard by the board are for things that people don't even realize were a violation. Now, of course, they had compliance opportunity and whatever, but a lot of people don't even know what the code is. Some of it's common sense stuff that people should know. But look, people walk around, people live here and they see trash cans all over the place. Why wouldn't they think my trash can can be sitting in front of my garage 24/7? That's where I keep my trash can. Well, you're not allowed to keep your trash can there. So communication there's very, very, very little communication that I see about code in the village. One of the specific things that I had mentioned that I thought was such a great idea was putting stickers on the trash cans that say, here are the rules of the trash. Here are the trash rules. Here are the days it goes out. Here's what's allowed to be out there. Here's what's not. And put your trash can away. And away means take the verbiage right out of the code. Behind the fence, behind the house, however it reads, but not sitting in your front yard, not sitting in front of your garage. But you put a big gigantic pink sticker on the top of every trash can in the village, people can't miss that. There's an easy, people put their trash out and they take the trash can out and they bring the trash can back in. They're not going to miss a big pink sticker. Then they might miss a post on social media. And I know we're going to discuss communication later. And then all the things from street view, just the kind of the mess and the obvious violations that you see. Look, what happens where you can't see stuff? That's the hard part of these people's job is they're trying to keep things safe and running properly. And a lot of these things are happening inside and they can't necessarily see it. That's a whole different thing than the stuff that's visible from the street. So while we work on big things like a vision project and new ordinances and all these things to take the village to a better place, code enforcement that doesn't work, it kind of drags us down every day. So we can work on big stuff, but this is the thing dragging us back. So what I'd like to hear is the current state of the department. What's being done now differently and better than what was done in the past? How can we be assured that that's going to continue? What's the plan moving forward? How do we make sure we don't repeat past failures? And this is not the first time that in the years that I've lived here, the department has basically been overhauled several times. This staff will make it better. These procedures will make it better. We'll outsource it now, and that'll make it better. And it's not getting better. There was a plan, Mario, you had a plan to do something by zones that for whatever reason we decided not to do. But I have heard you talk about rebranding it. And I think, I don't want to misquote you, but I think the words you use are community standards kind of a thing, or rebranding of it. So I'm hoping that that's part of what we're going to hear from you tonight as well. Because when I hear you speak of that, there's a sound to that sounds good. But we need measurable results and improvements. And we need to make sure everything's tightened up from a legal perspective. I see things happening in code compliance meetings that we then find out aren't exactly legal and we can't be doing it that way. Forms and processes are letting things like this slip between the cracks. And then, Doreen, I understand you're a temporary part of this, and I attend some of the meetings. You guys see me at the meetings, and things seem to be going better. I want to know what's going to be the permanent thing that makes it continue to be better, and how it's all, when you're not here, how it's going to continue to be a good working department.
Mayor, if I may introduce real quick. Thank you. And Commissioner, thank you for bringing up the topic. When I first came on board, December of 2020, the village had a few months prior hired a new code department. The person who was leading the code department had recently retired from Miami-Dade County after 20-something years working in code and moving forward. So when I came on board, it's like, great. We got somebody who's learning, somebody who's retired, who has been doing it for 20-something years. They're going to go after, and that first year, they really went through trying to clean up a lot of what was done in prior years. Right. Then what will typically happen with Biscayne Park, some people noticed our new code officer and offered him $20,000 more, and he jumped at the opportunity. And so with that, one of our staff members said, I'm interested and I'd like to move into that role. That person had been supporting the code department, understood how the meetings worked, how everything went. There was a little bit of a delay, but we said, okay. I spoke with the supervisor. He said, I can maintain it until they come on board, and this is going to work, trust me. Okay. During that time frame, we started seeing the cracks, and processes that we thought were being done correctly suddenly we're bringing out red flags, not only from the code board, but from myself. During that time, CAP government came and became our vendor for the building. Purposely, in the RFP, there are several non-building related line items that I put in there that I knew either CAP or Calvin Giordano which are basically the two or the Coordino group, could facilitate, which is supplement village staff with. Building clerk is one, code office officers are two, floodplain management officers is another one, civil engineers, things like that. As soon as they came on board, understanding that some of this is not working, we need to figure out where. We asked CAP to come in and do an overall assessment. At that time, I decided we're also not waiting, and we brought in Luciano Nibs, who's been our code officer for the past several months, almost, is it close to a year now? No, it feels that way. But he came on board, and I thought it was perfect timing, because now we can do an assessment, make sure that our new officer is going to be trained the right way. So CAP brought in Ms. Doreen Grant, who's with us today. Doreen, thank you for being here. Just to give you a little bit of background, and I'm sure if I misspeak, please clarify me. Doreen's history, I thought, matched perfectly for what we needed to actually, for me to redo the code department. And this is the only time that I've done it. She has a history of walking into a municipality and creating a code department so that the municipality does code instead of the county. Going into a municipality that the code department is in shambles and picking it all up and making it a shining star, and so forth. From there, she then went to Miami Beach, where she was training all the new code officer employees on how to be a code officer. So I was like, great. Not only does she know how to audit the department, find out what are being done with the state, but she also knows how to train the officers so that they're doing things the right way. So during this time, she's been training Luciano within there. The idea is to get him to a point where he can take over that, and then we'll be able to hire a second internal code officer. She's been doing an amazing job, but I'll let her speak to the procedures. I will tell you this, within 1 hour, the first day she came to evaluate, she told me, Mario, you've got really big problems here. And we said, then let's run. Let's not wait. Let's not hold this off. You tell me exactly what you need to do to be here, and just come in and be here. Part of the reasons, and just one example, I know she'll get into more examples, but the one example that comes, and I said, absolutely, I can match it to the money, is our code requires that we mail the violations and the notices to the property owner, apart from just posting it on the property. And doing affidavits, notarized affidavits saying, I'm posting this on your property on such day and so forth, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that wasn't being done. So a reason why a lot of these former code cases that were from BSNA and so forth, the technicality is improper notification. And there's other things that I'll let her get into, but I just kind of wanted to kind of set that stage and everything that she's doing. And I know ultimately one of her last tasks, which she's been looking at and trying to do, is to create a standard operating procedure that talks from the moment we witness or we get a complaint to the day it goes to the code board, and then inspection that it's in compliance. So she's doing all of that while training and also doing inspecting it and working with Luciano. So Doreen, with that kind of, can you please kind of go through everything that you've been seeing, witnessing, and how we're actually changing that? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mario. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, the commissioners, village clerk, residents, and I would like to acknowledge there of the code board. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to serve the village of Biscayne Park. As the manager said, my name is Doreen Grant, and I just recently came from the city of Miami Beach, where I worked as a code officer and a training officer. Before I went to the city of Miami Beach, I worked for Calvin Giordano and Associates, which is a company that is very similar to CAP. And Calvin Giordano ran code compliance for several municipalities. I was part of the group that initiated the code compliance department for the city of Pompano, city of Deerfield. It's a whole list, lots of municipalities. I worked directly with the director of code. I was the lead special master clerk, so I trained a lot of clerks in Broward County. While training and while working as a code compliance special master clerk, I trained as a code compliance officer. I did all the certifications in code. I did a lot of practical work building up code departments. When we walked into a city, usually it was a city like the Village, a department here that's having a lot of issues. Now, a city like Pompano Beach that had 100,000 residents, in comparison to this city, we can't compare. It was a lot of work. But it was me and a few other people building it, putting things together until we were able to control the department, make sure everything was running smooth. So we cleaned up Pompano, we cleaned up Deerfield Beach. Those are some of the biggest cities I can think of, and we did a lot of other smaller cities. I was instrumental in starting the code department for the village of Estero in Lee County, Collier County. They had no code department. The county used to run code before the small village incorporated and became its own entity. So when they did that, they called in Calvin Giordano and Associates to come and do the engineering, building, and I was one of the people that started the code department there. We started from scratch. We did everything, built the department. We did the documents, everything from scratch. And it's now a running department. I went to the city of Miami Beach for one thing, to train in the field, because I had done a lot of office work, but I had never worked in the field. Even though I had the qualifications of an officer, I had never really been out to work as an officer out in the field. So working for a multi-billion city like Miami Beach was different, but it gave me a lot of experience working in the field. Arriving at the village of Biscayne Park was interesting. Very, very different from what I've seen and very, very different from what I'm used to. I saw the problems right away. Some of them bigger than others, but my job is to make sure that we straighten everything out and the code compliance department can run according to Chapter 162. Most of the things that were being done, okay, they were okay, but there were some fundamental things that were being done wrong that I've had to work to start creating a roadmap, or let me say, to create a system where people don't just go out of their way to do things that are not in line with what the Florida statute expectation is. One of the things, like the manager mentioned, was sending mail out. Mail is supposed to be sent out certified. They were sending mail out, regular mail, so there was no tracking. For instance, if you have a case where you had to prove that there was service, and in a code case without service, there is no case. How can we prove service? It's by sending out those certified mails and making mailings and making sure that we track them, and we have proof there that we did serve the violator. This wasn't done for years. So one of the reasons why we had to throw out some of the cases was we don't have service, we don't have a case. Any special master will tell you this. The village council may attest to this. If there's no service, there is no code case. That case can be contested in court and it will be thrown out by a judge. So that was one of the simple things. Some of the other problems that I found in the department were liens were not being filed the way liens were supposed to be filed. They have actually filed a lot of notices of intent. A notice is not a document. I mean, it's not a it's a notice. It's not an order. So they were literally filing notices in the county records as a lien. Outside of that, there was liens being filed with the wrong numbers. Liens that were filed without the right dates in the affidavits. The affidavits were not filed. The final order or the order of enforcement is very specific, that a code officer, after the order is issued, has to get out and do a reinspection to make sure that they have complied by the comply by date, or if not complied by the comply by date, file an affidavit and that affidavit will be used to file to enforce the order for the lien. All of that wasn't done. It's a lot more things I could go into detail that were not done. And now I'm trying to bring everything in line. I recently finished the code compliance policies and procedures. So when the officers are issuing their violations, they have a guide. When I started working here and working with Luciano was very new in the department. He knew very little about code. I mean, he has worked as a law enforcement officer, which is very helpful, but it wasn't specific to code. So I had to start from scratch, and I think he's really getting up to speed, understanding what code entails and what is expected of him as an officer. So the procedures now will help him, because this is like a roadmap for him to know that when he goes out there, this is what he needs to do to issue a violation. This is what the law says, and these are what the guidelines are. Outside of the manual for policies and procedures in the department, I'm also putting together a training manual that if I'm not here, he would be able to train another officer using that manual. We're also doing another manual for administrative procedures for our clerk in the office, because without the clerk in the office doing what they need to do to support us with administrative stuff, we wouldn't be able to come out of the field and complete the files the way we need to complete the files. We are overhauling the filing system. There's been a lot of documents missing, not just in BSNA. Files were not attached to, I would say evidence wasn't attached to a lot of files in the system. So when a case comes before the board and there's no supporting evidence, it's very difficult for me to support a case that doesn't have, I wasn't here 5 years ago. If a case was issued by someone 5 years ago, there's no picture for me to bring to the board and say, this is what the violation looked like. I'm out of luck. I mean, I can't support that case. I can't stand up for that case. And it's a lot of cases like that. So I'm not just going to Commissioner Kennedy, I'm not just going to the board to throw out cases. I'm going to the board to introduce best practices. We have to do things right. These are people's properties we are dealing with. Why should we put a lien on someone's property when everything in the file is wrong? The date of the affidavit, the lien itself is calculated. It's a lot of those cases. I'm not here to bash my predecessors or people who worked before me. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just here to do what I can to make things right. I know my time here is limited, and I've been working very quickly and as fast as I can to train not just the code officer, but also train the administrative person in the office. They can work together to have a system that hopefully will transcend my presence here.
Thank you, Doreen. And just on two quick subjects that I know were kind of brought up, and at least one of them was brought up in comments. Recently, the commission approved new driveway standards, and the commission gave until January for people to kind of do what they got to do to catch up. So we have
Manassas too, we talked.
right. What code officers have done is everybody who didn't have a driveway, that they've inspected and they felt that received a courtesy notice, right? And so they gave them that grace period with that courtesy notice, and all of that starts to wind down now. And so what's next? Well, if someone's already in the process of trying to get a permit, going in front of planning, we work with them. It's like, okay, you're in that process. We're not going to give you the violation right now because you're trying to resolve it. For the people who haven't done anything, they never went to planning, they never put in an application, they never called, emailed, or anything based on the courtesy notices and stuff, then those will start moving into those violation phases, right? So the way that I've always asked our code department is I prefer compliance over violations. And so if we can work with our residents to make sure that they're complying, then let's do that. Because we attract more bees with honey than we do with vinegar, right? The other is short-term vacation rentals. Hey, send out the courtesy notices to everybody based on the new software that we have, and let them know that they need to get the permits and stuff. And there's been quite a few who have started calling and saying, hey, what is this? What do I got to do? Oh my goodness, I got to do all these things. And, oh, but as like, hey, this is what it is. And for those people who have been doing that, we're working with you. We'll continue to do that. Those who have completely ignored it, they'll be getting their violation notices, and they'll work through that process, and it'll go through and come in front of the code board and stuff like that. So those are the two new ones that kind of hit that are really big and impacted more than just one or two off properties. So I just wanted the commission and everybody to know that they're working that. They're trying to get as much compliance as possible, but some of that time is starting to run out, and they're going to be issuing those violations, and it'll start working through the system. If there's any questions, if you want to touch any subject, I mean, she's been here. She's more than willing to talk. Whatever we can do to satisfy.
Excuse me. I do have a few questions for you. That was very informative, what you provided to us. Thank you very much. It sounds like in your short time within our department, you've done quite a bit to try and repair some of the deficiencies that you've seen. All of the things that you mentioned sound like they're very crucial steps into correcting some of the problems, the guides, training manuals, best practices. Those are fantastic. I think my question for you would be, is there any, you've been doing this a long time, it sounds like, and for lack of a better phrase, I'm going to call you an expert in this. In your expert opinion, in what you have seen in all of these municipalities, large and small, is there anything that you can ask of us that we can talk about, that we can help with? Is it a resource issue? Is it a procedural issue? Is there something that the commission can do to help you put together those best practices that you feel the department needs?
Combination of all issues, procedural support. I believe that the department needs a lot of support, a lot of understanding. We get chewed a lot, not just from residents, but sometimes from staff. We're doing what we're supposed to do, but we never get to other people. We never get the way they want it, or we never get to meet their expectations. Excuse my English. We never get to meet their expectations, and I'll explain what I mean. In the building department, there are issues with getting permits. We issue violations, sometimes based on people doing work without permits. The building department works at a different pace than we do. So in working with the building department, there has to be understanding that this is where we are, and this is our direction, and this is their pace, and this is their direction. So we need support, not just internally, but from the outside. When we issue violations to outsiders, like residents, they run to the mayor, they run to the commissioners. They issued us with a violation, but what code compliance has nothing to do now that they're giving me an STVR, which is short-term rental violation. It's every kind of thing. Now, if the commissioners can stand up for us and say they are enforcing the laws that we make, work with them. When the commission comes at us and says, why did you do this? Explain this. And we feel pressured, like, we are doing what you're asking us or is expecting of us. And when you come at us, we are pressured, like we are not ourselves now. We are working to impress and we are working to give you this, and we are not doing work the way we are supposed to work. So we need support, not just from the outside, we need support internally.
That's a good start. Is part of the work that you, as part of the work that you do or you have done for other municipalities, do you put together any type of comprehensive report of some kind that says, these are the areas that I see are lacking in this department, and then maybe something that you could present to us to say, I've spent a lot of time with this, gone through it. These are the things that I think we need. These are the ways that I think that you can achieve them. Is that something that you would do in kind of normal course of practice?
Absolutely. One thing I'm proud of the company that I work for, CAP, that they do is they hire skilled people. They will search for skilled people. It's really important for a department to run right, for a department to run the way it's supposed to run, to have skilled workers. Whether you bring them on unskilled and train them on the job, or you bring them skilled from where they're coming from, it's really important that you choose carefully who you bring on board. Some people have the job because it's a job. And then there are people who are interested in making a difference. So for me, that's a big thing. Everywhere I've worked, I realized that when people are working just to earn a living, there's no interest in the job itself. There's no, I'm not sure what expression I use, but people have got to have the heart for the job that they're doing. If that's missing, then there are issues, there are problems. So that's one thing I think I would say, skilled workers.
Well, I certainly think that I would really like to see, and I would welcome some opinions from your perspective of what you see as lacking in the department, what you see as some best practices to put in place, or some things, action items, some things that we can act on, some things that we as a commission can move on to assist the department in getting up to speed. So I think that's something that I would personally like to see.
And the other thing I think I would like to add is checks and balances. When there are checks and balances, people tend to do what they're supposed to do. There's no one checking their work and what they're doing, then they free for all. People just do what they will get them through the day. I think there need to be checks and balances put in place where I report to the clerk, I try, about some of the things that I'm doing. When I'm unsure of what I'm supposed to do, I go to Shantae, and I'm Shantae, this is what I'm doing, what do you think? Someone else to look at what I'm doing and someone else to give an opinion on what I'm doing is very important. And then we have the village council, of course, where we run with questions, and she'll clarify things for us, and she'll, put things in order for us where we're not sure. So someone to check our work, absolutely important.
Well, I'll open it up to other questions, but if the rest of the group would, or the rest of this commission would agree, I think that it might be something worthwhile going forward to have from you, of what you think the department could use and how you think the commission could help. Thank you.
May I? Well, Doreen, can I say you're fantastic? You are just tremendous. I mean, I also got the chance to hear you during the board meetings. It's not an easy job. You guys have definitely, and you used all the words I like to hear. You talked about standard operating procedures, which is something I've been discussing with Mario on the back end for every department. This department needs it the most. You talk about administration procedures, you talk about training, you talk about filing systems. I'm wondering what that means in terms of technology. You talk about best practices. So I think all of this at the end and what we're experiencing, because whether you coming back with this kind of a conversation item, I believe it comes from years and years of a slow process of transition and an adaptation, commission to commission, and staff to staff, seeing so many changes. But what I see is a little bit going back to the basics of let's figure out what is needed as the baseline for running this department so that you can walk away, leave a booklet behind, leave trainings, leave documents, leave processes so that whoever comes in can follow correctly. And I feel that this, what we may feel we're not super satisfied where it stands now. It's part of the pain of going through the path of transformation. That's all it is. So I in my opinion, it would disagree with asking for reporting on what it's needed from the commission. I think you are currently working that with the manager, and that has been a very, the manager is putting into place this system so it can operate and it can provide that as a result. I don't think the commission needs to get involved in that to the detail, and that's where I would leave it to the manager in my opinion. But I just want to say that I think this is the route. I think this is the way to do it. My question would be timing, because again, this happens on a monthly basis. You have the chance to meet with residents and so we need to get going and we need to get this in place. And so what I would want to know from the village manager, from the department is, when do we feel we are where we need to be? And what does that mean?
It's difficult for me to put a number, a date on that, but I'll talk about some of the things that we've done in the department. The manager talked about the short-term vacation rental project. We have pioneered the first, I should say, we have issued the first violations since the ordinance was enacted. In the month of March, we issued 32 violations for short-term rentals. So there's a lot of mad people out there. This violation comes with $1,000 fine. So we've had some people pay already. We have a few people that have appealed the cases, and the compliance date hasn't come through. So we're still waiting on some people to do what they need to do. It was a big project.
This was never done before. You're saying you put the first.
The short-term rental, yeah, it was just enacted from what I
Yeah,
understand.
that ordinance just passed last
It's a
year.
new
It's a new one.
ordinance. So what we did at first, when I just started, I've only been here 5.5 months, by the way. We issued courtesy notices. We wanted to ensure due process. So we issued courtesy notices and gave them time. We actually went over the time that we told them we were going to issue violations in January if they didn't respond to the courtesy notices, but we only started in March. So we gave them an extra 2 months. We sent out these violations. It was a huge project, but Luciano was gracious and we worked hard and we did it. All violations are out. We have, I'm glad to report, we have 12 permits now. And I'm happy to see that. We had 0 permits when I started. So it's coming, it's steady, slow, steady, but people are applying. It's a very long process and they've been complaining about the process. So I'm sending them back to the commission to come and complain about the process because they put that in place. However, people are responding, whether angry or not, they are responding.
And just so finishing on that, is there per se, because that's how I envision and that's what I've experienced myself is, so when you say standard operating procedures in place, we have a booklet, we have a system, we have a 1, 2, 3 steps from the email that needs to start going to how do you close it in the system, how do you code it in the system so anybody can follow it.
Yes. We do have it. And once I just did a draft of the code compliance policies procedure manual. I'll go through it one more time, but I'll send it to the village council to authenticate the document to make sure it's in line with the policies of the village at large, and it's in line with chapter 162 of the Florida statutes.
And commission, to the credit, the January and February code compliance department report was brought up earlier. If you remember the last report you guys received, there were hundreds of cases from the old system that were like, we said that they were just opened, but the ideal was we feel that a lot of these were closed out. They were just not closed in the system. And so they have been going back through all those, trying to make sure and re-inspect, and that's where a lot of that, they've been focusing, trying to close that so we can just put those old system away and not use it anymore. It's all on OpenGov and it makes it a little bit easier. But one thing that I want to make everybody aware of, it's not just the code violations and the courtesy notice that they do. Our code officers do the short-term vacation rental property inspections. They do the landlord permit property inspections. They do the reoccupancy inspections. These, although they tend to be quick inspections, take up a lot of time that they have because there is a lot of inspections that they do. Doreen, just, I know it varies from week to week, but on average, about how many do you guys do a week?
Week, I have a number here. We have done since January 48 inspections for landlord permits. We have done 23 inspections for short-term rentals. So divide that by 5 days a week. I mean, we don't do it 5 days a week. We do it, say, about 4 days a week. So we do an average, I'd say, 5 to 6 inspections a day just for landlord and short-term rental.
Do you, by any chance, do you have the reoccupancy inspection number?
Yes, we do the reoccupancies and we do the occupational license inspections as well. So these are home inspections. We have to get into the property and do these inspections.
Mario, may I ask you a
There's-
question? I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
They are short inspections. However,
Yeah.
with every inspection, there's background work. So we have to do the background work. We have to make the calls. We have to arrange for the appointments and line them up. And then we go out and.
And
do
then
inspections.
reschedule when
And
they
then
don't show
reschedule
up?
when they're
or-
not there. So this has taken up a lot of our time, especially in the months of January and February, because everybody was renewing their landlord permits
Yeah.
and everybody's trying to apply for a short-term rental vacation for the first time.
Is that something that that CAP could or should take over, the building official take over?
No, we transitioned out of the building official and other licensed officials from doing that. Mainly because, like in our code, for example, the reoccupancy, we cannot, and I know this is a topic that you've at one point want to bring up when some of these other subjects are done with. We cannot start a new code violation based off the reoccupancy inspection. If the building official walks into the property and sees something that's against Florida building code, he has to report it or he could be liable and his license can be taken. And they were not willing to do those.
They're not required to do that.
They're not a building official. Yeah, they're not a building inspector. So they were not comfortable being put in that position. And so we took that out of the building official's hands and we put it within our code department.
I would also like to acknowledge our village residents, Linda. When the manager mentioned how many cases we closed, I think over 500 cases that were open and should have been closed. Now, the process was daunting because we had to go through each case, open each case, read the history of the case, determine if the case should be closed or open. And she did a great job helping me do this, helping
Not,
us do this.
not only
task.
that, but to the commission. I did a little bit of a project to see what kind of revenue we had in past fiscal years from fines. And the village averaged between 12 to about 20,000 for the most part. Last year, I think it was last year, it was 164,000. And that is because Linda has been calling not only for the code fines, but also for the landlord stuff and collecting. Hey, we noticed you haven't done for the past, 2 years or year or whatever statute allows us to go backwards on. And so she's been calling all of the people and making sure, and it's that regular, I think at the end of the day, it's that regular constant touch point with the residents and with who's applying or that's really helped. So thank you very much, Linda. We do appreciate that, quite a big deal. Overall, commissioners, looking more globally at big picture. I don't think this department can function with less than 3 people. I think you need 2, you definitely need 1 full-time code officer. Doreen is 3/4 time, right? She's not full-time. She's more like, 3/4 there. You might be able to kind of get away with that. Rafael, I don't know if we want to say it's half or 3/4 on the administrative to help, because when they go out in the field and they see everything, because we got to do affidavits for postings and stuff, we can't take full advantage of the system where they can be on the field, type it into the computer, hit print, get the violation and stick it on the door. So they need to come back. And so they'll come back with several. And then for them to kind of put each one into the system and then start doing the notification and the letter, that takes a lot of time. So having him in the office, helping them with that, helps speed some of that up. Ideally, based on kind of where I think Commissioner Kennedy was trying to refer to the level of service for the department and getting to community standards and having a department that has a lot of touch points with the residents beyond just the courtesy notice and the violations. I'd probably think you would need more than the 3. But then we run into the money of it, right? Where the department's already at 160 essentially. Every year that kind of keeps creeping up because of insurance, because of salaries and all that kind of stuff. Looking at, I just did a quick search on governmentjobs.com for code officers. Luciano, cover your ears. I don't want you to hear this part. But cities, the bare minimum of what they pay for their code officers is kind of the top range of what we could afford, right? So we're going to constantly have, so growing that department becomes a little bit more tricky, and we got to say, okay, where's that happy medium? The way that I somewhat look at it, I take a step back and I start looking at, okay, the way that the village is there anything that we're doing from an administrative standpoint or that the commission is doing that is harming property value, right? Is our lack of, we haven't hit this plateau from the code department. Is that causing an increase of blight within the village, which is going to lower the property value? And I don't think we're there. I mean, we see our property values going up. Could we always get better, and should we be striving for that next level? Absolutely. But I think we're in a spot that when we're able to bring the correct procedures that meet Florida statute, forget about what our code says, it's meeting Florida statute first and foremost. And then being able to find the people with the right temperament. To Doreen's credit and to Luciano's credit, they're some of the most patient people that I've ever met in my life. I don't know that we've had that in the past based on the stories and things that I've witnessed. I think that the position may have got into people's heads when dealing with residents and being confronted and stuff like that. Our officers take a lot of abuse, verbal abuse, right? And I understand the frustration from when someone gets the violation and stuff like that. I completely understand that. And they know that that's part of the job, but they have to have the right temperament for that. And apart from the temperament, they have to have the attention to detail, right? So it's going to be great that we have the document that says step 1, step 2, step 3, but if they don't have the attention to detail, then everything starts falling apart. Yeah. And right now, I've told Luciano this privately, so this isn't a shock, but I will say it publicly. His attention to detail, the manner that he has come onto the scene and the dedication that he has given. There are times where it's 5 o'clock or I show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and he's already there. And it's not that he's doing administrative work to try to catch up. He's just reading code. And it's almost like, Luciano, you don't have to literally memorize every word of the code. And he's like, don't worry about it. I've got this covered, you know? And so that kind of dedication, that is the type of employee that I look for, even though he had zero experience as a code officer. He had prior experience as a police officer, which I felt the skills transferred very well. But when I met him, I was impressed, and Shantae was in the interview as well. So, you know, word of encouragement, Luciano, keep doing what you're doing. Doreen, I think you're doing an amazing job. Keep teaching him the right way, keep putting us in the right spot. I personally feel very, very pleased with the direction that the department is going. I think we're getting the right coverage that we need. I believe Janie has mentioned to me that there is a clear difference between even when we thought things were going well, and it's just that we didn't know any better until we saw the cracks. Even when we thought things were going well compared to what's being presented and how these things are being shown now is almost night and day. And so I think we're on the right track, and I'm hoping that that is instilling confidence in what we're doing from the commission and from the community. And again, we'll continue to plug at this and do whatever we need to make sure it's being done right, so that even though there might be that turnover, we know that there's a process in place that will instill confidence from everybody and transparency.
Can I just ask real quick? We're running out of time, so I'm just going to make this real brief. Two important questions. Number one is, how much longer are you going to be here? Is there any way that we can convince you to stay? Those are two really important questions. You don't have to answer them now. Think about it though. And then the other piece is, look, guys, the reality is that this is the code department is a extremely political position. Depending on who's sitting here is how the code department is going to go. Because I've seen it in the past where people sit up here and play politics and don't give them the backing that they need and that they deserve. Okay. And start telling them, look, don't, that's my friend. Don't be so aggressive, be nice. Okay. And so we're not giving them the support that they need. So right now, we may all sit here and we may agree that this is wonderful and we want to push forward and make sure that they're doing the things right. But ideally, in a wonderful world, that job that they do becomes not politicized. I don't know how that we get there and how that happens. I don't even know if it's possible, because it's even happened in the police force where at one point, I remember years ago, where they were telling the police officer, hey, don't give out so many tickets, relax. Yeah, this was here, this happened. So my point is that, one of the most important things that we can do besides supporting Doreen and all her objectives that she's doing is to support them. And not make this political. If you get a phone call from a resident, because that's when people start complaining about this is because they just got a violation. Nobody thinks about code. The only time they don't like code is when they get a violation, right? I've gotten violations. As a commissioner, I got a violation. And I applauded him because it was my fault, being lazy, not taking my lights down, whatever. Anyway, that's another story. But I think that, like I said, we got to give them the backing that they need, and in order for them to do their job and to do it right. But thank you, and think about my questions, okay?
I have a couple of quick follow-ups, and Art, I've been on the receiving end of it as well, and it works both ways, because I was on the receiving end of it when code was being used as a weapon against me, and they were they made up a violation that wasn't true. And I had to come defend myself to a board and a code officer who had to admit that she brought it when she shouldn't have, and the village looked really stupid that night. So it swings both ways. Couple of quick questions, Doreen. So thank you for that report. It makes me feel better knowing what you accomplished, and there's a plan in place when you leave. talk to us about communications and what you've experienced in other municipalities where you've worked or were contracted to work, and how communications can help with compliance. Because look, none of us want to fine people. We want compliance, right? But sometimes when you can't get compliance, that's how the system works. When you cannot get compliance, then you get money, right? So, and you ultimately get compliance one way or the other. So either you get compliance or you get compliance and money, right? From the people. So talk to us about how communications can play an active role in this, because there's none coming from this village.
Communication is really important, especially with the officer making contact with the resident is concerned. That's the initial part. We have to explain to the residents why we are violating them, what the violation is, and make them understand the process. This is what's going to happen. I'm giving you this verbal, and then I'm going to give you a courtesy notice. After this courtesy notice, I'm giving you time to comply. It's called due process. After this time is gone, if you don't comply, this is where I'm escalating this. So communication here works in making the customer, client, or resident, whatever you want to call them, understand the process. If we are able to communicate clearly to the resident that this is what code compliance is here to do, this is what we're doing, this is the intention, this is the outcome we're looking for. We're looking for compliance before we look for escalation and penalty.
Right.
Half the time when the client understands that, they comply.
Now, at that point, they're already in the process, though. What about preemptive communication to make people more aware of what the things are that you're most commonly citing for, the things that are most serious life safety things? At the building department level, talk to us about that kind of communication, including at the building department level. What can be communicated then to people? Because, for example, the other day I was for a walk, and there was active pool construction going on at a house with a permit and no construction fence. The side yard was wide open. I could see the pool from the street. So that's a serious life safety violation. So talk to us about communication to residents and how we can how the village should be and can be getting the message out to people. So we get, so they aren't even, we don't have to get compliance after they violated. They simply are just being better stewards of their community.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Kennedy. One of the biggest things in code compliance is education. We have to educate people about the ordinances, about safety, about health hazards, and their own welfare. Well, code compliance helps their own welfare. I'm very grateful for the village clerk, because every time something comes up, she comes up to me, how can we communicate this to the residents? How can we inform them before this becomes a problem? That's our village clerk. These mass mailings we send out, I think we should use those mass mailings in the future to educate people. For example, we can pick an ordinance. Right now, the hot thing is short-term rentals. We can keep sending short-term rental education in pieces or in sections to the residents. Some of them read it, some of them don't. But education is everything, and communicating what is expected of them and what the village requires is really important. So if we can get ahead of not just going out there to issue violations, educating the village, the residents about the ordinances and what will get them in trouble before they get in trouble would be really helpful.
Do you think the sticker on top of the trash can idea is worth anything?
It is. I actually like the idea.
Okay. I volunteer to write it, design it, and bring it to you guys for your opinions on it, but there's something we could take a bite
Didn't
of.
we already do that?
Hmm?
Yeah, we already did that.
The pink sticker on the trash can?
It's not
Maybe
pink.
make it
but
bigger.
It has
Yeah.
the dates and everything on there, yeah. That was done
It just
over a year ago.
directs you to the code.
It's a really
Mayor.
it's a brilliant idea, and if we can make I've seen the stickers, but if we can
Almost
make
like
them
a
bigger,
warning.
they're too small.
Like,
Tell you where to put your trash. Look at mine when I get home. My trash cans are at the curb right now. I didn't bring them in before I came. I'll probably go home and find a violation notice on my door. Okay, Doreen, in your opinion, when you leave here and you leave these processes behind, do you think this village can handle this department as an in-house department?
Absolutely. if they have the right people working, the right people in the right positions, they absolutely can do it. Absolutely. Why not? All right. I have one last thing. Ms. Vice Mayor, if you can excuse me. The commissioner mentioned security and the ban on weapons. I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the commission that a lot of jurisdictions ignore security for code officers, but I wanted to bring it to the record that most of the time we meet harsh people, we meet criticism out there, we meet a lot of angry people, and we don't have weapons to protect ourselves. The code board meetings are held without security. And with something like this being done, as a ban being lifted on assault weapons, we are afraid, we are a little bit nervous because we get into people's homes and the door is closed behind us when we do these inspections. We approach people's doors. I mean, here in the village of Biscayne, outside of me being in a stampede in Miami Beach, someone opened the door to their house and a pit bull came out. This pit bull was bigger than me. Luciano froze, is that the word? I mean, he stood there, but I started moving back and this dog saw the movement and it was coming for me. So we are not always safe out there, and I hope that security and our safety can be made a priority. We don't have weapons to protect ourselves. We don't have anything to protect ourselves, and yet we are put in a position to deal with the public, an angry public.
And I think in that sense, nobody better than you guys to suggest that as to what is it that you need. Is it, how does safety look if you're walking out, as a code officer? And when you work with the staff in terms of defining that and the procedures, maybe that can be considered, because you bring a very good point.
I would like to think a little bit more because the village of Biscayne Park is very different from some of the jurisdictions that I've worked in the city of Miami Beach. They're introducing bulletproof vests, but of course that's a very different place. There's 3 million people on the island at any given time who are armed and who are shooting people without consideration. The village of Biscayne is a little bit different. So I would want to think about that and maybe come back with you with some suggestions.
We would like that, I think. And if you could continue to work with the rest of the staff to make some recommendations, again, about what we might be able to do to assist you and the rest of the department, we would appreciate that. Thank you so much for all your presentation and all this information and the opportunity to discuss this. I think that we all feel that this has been very informative and helpful.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So very quickly, seeing that there's only a few minutes left, I'd like to, I know there's at least 2 items that are sort of time sensitive here. That being 13C, the letter of support, and any discussion with respect to the April 29 meeting. If we're comfortable with it, I'd like to just move up 13C, as I understand that would be very quick. Okay, so 13C.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and I apologize, Vice Mayor, for frog leaping your item. Essentially, the county is getting together with Palm Beach County, Broward, and Miami-Dade to apply for a grant, and it's through the Office of Resiliency. They're asking, all 3 counties are asking all their municipalities for a letter of support. We're not committing time, resources, or money to this. We're just saying, yes, go out, go get it, and we'll be part of the process whenever you guys are going through the grant stuff. So I really just need a consensus to make sure that the commission is okay with me signing the letter and sending it to the county. The letter is due tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I was done. That's it. We're good. Yeah.
Easy.
And my item, we can move it to next month. It's fine.
Okay, so in the interest of the next meeting that we have, April 29, the retreat, I know Commissioner Kennedy, you wanted to add something on to say that there was some brief discussion about that meeting.
Yes, and I'll make it real quick. So we never, unless I'm kind of misunderstood, we never finished our conversation about meeting organization. Some of you wanted to talk about doing a work organization. There was talk about doing a workshop and then an actual meeting and trying to sort of divide things that way. And then we had these other things get scheduled. I felt like we never finished that conversation. And the one thing that I brought up during that conversation that I thought got some traction was that we have been sort of charging forward, trying to get things done and get caught up on things. But we don't have a plan of how we're going to get it done and when we're going to get it done. We have some old business from the previous commission, things that were not finished, things that are presently in the works. When we're together on April 29th, when we're done with that and we can really say done, set that aside, I would like if we could stay for another, I don't know what it would be, half hour, 45 minutes, and just everyone bring their the pending stuff and let Mario bring it. Here's all the stuff that's sort of hanging out there, and decide how we're going to go about it. And then at that point, if you guys want to discuss your meeting idea of how you think that that might impact that, I would feel better if we kind of had a plan. We're kind of like, have another meeting and then we're charging ahead on stuff. And now we have all these visioning things that are going to start happening as well. And some other, and we already have a special meeting scheduled for May. So all of a sudden now May's backed up too. Yeah. So, and we have unfinished business and now new things keep being added to the agenda, and I'm not faulting any of the new stuff because I'm hoping at the next meeting, Veronica, that your item can be moved up to old business. So it's ahead of the new business, no longer considered new business, which is at the end of the agenda. And I'm hoping it can be the first thing under old business because that's how much I prioritize that item. So that's my request of you guys. Can we have that conversation then and try to sort of organize our thoughts? Because we've never done it as a commission. We're a new group that never sat down and said, let's get our thoughts in order here. We just kind of went, boom, off we go.
I think that falls directly within the purview of what we want to accomplish on that date. So I think that's
When I said to Mario, should I bring it up to here? He suggested, why don't you ask them if they want to do it on that meeting? Because that's kind of a strategic, we'll be in a strategic mindset.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect time and place to bring it up.
You guys cool with that? So if Mario, I'm sorry? Okay, so if Mario would bring like whatever you and Shantae know is kind of hanging out there and everyone else does as well, we can sit there and try to figure out how we're going to organize it. And some things might get kicked to the curb and some things will be lifted up on the list and off we go. Absolutely. Okay,
Perfect.
thank you guys.
All right, wonderful. Well, seeing the time, seeing that we won't get through 13A or 13B in the next 6 minutes, we can move those to the next meeting, hopefully.
Can I say something before you go?
Yeah,
You're
sure.
gonna have me 1 minute. Yes, I have it. So interesting, and we go into the village communications later, but a lot of what Doreen said tonight could be kind of put together in a calendar that we can very easily attack. So I'm excited to hear that the department has a route and it's very clear and it seems to be very efficient in terms of where it's going but then how do we distribute it? A lot of it, you talked about the top 5 things. I actually have it written down, like little things from across the board. So I just wanted to tie that into
Little things from what?
from the board, for example, the top 5 things that we're actually given
I see.
violations on, the top 10 things, a little review. Every month we can come up with something as part of communication, as part of education. I just wanted to bring it up because it just tied so well to what she just said. We'll extend later.
Perfect. Thank you.
Just, I forgot in my manager's report, but remember this Saturday, April 8th, we have the spring festival eggs extravaganza from I think it's from 10 to 12:30 and the egg hunt starts at 10:15 sharp.
Cool. Very good. We move the remaining items to next meeting. A motion to adjourn?
Actually, before you do, add items to the next meeting. So I just want to make sure CATS is put onto the next meeting agenda, please.
Yeah, certainly. So those 3, we have 3 items going on to the next agenda. Okay. So motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.